This meeting of the Board of Trustees of Tyler ISD has been called to order. There is a presence of a quorum, and the meeting has been duly called, and that notice of the meeting has been posted in the time and manner required. We are going to go into executive session for about 5 minutes, and then we'll be back out. So we'll see y'all after that. Okay, we have reconvened from executive session, and we are at the portion of our meeting for public participation. All of our speakers, just like last time, we have about 41, I believe. We'll have a minute and 20 seconds, and we are ready to hear the public. First, we have a familiar name, Arinthia Mason.
Good evening, Board. Superintendent, Board President Wade Washburn, Vice President Aaron Martinez. That's not my minute. Oh, you are counting. To the board members, it is great to be here this evening. I come representing the Black elected officials in Smith County, and particularly in Tyler ISD. We met a couple of weeks ago with other citizens in Tyler, and we have come to say to you that we support your decision, if it is made, to change the names of both high schools. We believe, as we have sat and talked, it's time to make a change. It's time to start anew. It's time to tear down any bridges that might separate us. And I realize it's not an easy decision, but I pray and I hope and pray that you all will work together in discussing this. And just know that this is not our first time to say we will support you. You can come to us and let us know if there are other issues you would like our support in, and we would be more than happy to do so. So just know that we support you. We know it's not easy. It's a difficult one, but the time is right. And I thank you for your time tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Mason. Okay, next we have Derek Choice. Hello, Mr. Choice.
Hello, how you guys doing today? Protocol, we say in church, has already been established. I heard Reverend Mason acknowledge this board, and we thank you guys for your service. I commend you because I sit in your seat, not that seat, but a seat of a public servant as a former city council member here in the city of Tyler. But I come today to urge this board, I know you have to make a difficult decision, but to urge this board to change the name of both high schools. You know, what's in a name? A lot's in a name. A name tells you what you stand for. A name tells you what you're all about. And I believe this city is all about change and ready to move forward. And so as a member of the Black elected officials, along with Reverend Mason and others, we come this evening to urge this board to change the name of both high schools where this community can move forward, and I would believe it would be therapeutic as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Choice. Okay, we have Ronald Purdue. Good afternoon, Mr. Purdue.
Hello, appreciate y'all asking us to speak. My name is Ronald Purdue. I'm a retired purchasing agent for the state of Texas, representing taxpayers of TISD. I have 10 members of my family that graduated from Lee. We do not want to change the name of Robert E. Lee R. John Tyler. I dare the liberal news media around here to show what I'm about to say because this is the truth. Have you ever heard of Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C.? This is where soldiers fought and died in many wars, even before the Civil War. Buried there are whites, blacks, Asians, Hispanic, etc. This is a national cemetery in the historical district of Washington. I say this because it is the home place of Robert E. Lee, a hero of our country, acknowledged throughout America. But today we are being told in Tyler, Texas, that his name is not good enough for us. I disagree. The Civil War was not fought over slavery, but over many issues, basically for economic reasons and the heavy hand of the North over the Confederacy. Today, TISD is being played by radical
10
groups
seconds.
wanting to remove our history. You know that, and I know that, and the taxpayers know that. Don't be cowards and grow a pair, and don't change the name.
Thank you, Mr. Purdue.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Donna Balbert. Hi, Donna.
Hi, my name is Donna Balbert. I want to thank you, President Washman, Vice President Martinez, my representative, Mr. Bergfield, Dr. Nation, Reverend Hager, and our new members, Mr. Newsom and Mrs. Atkins. Thank you for serving on our school board. I commend you on your 2019 designation as one of 5 TASA Honor School Boards. According to the TASA website, quote, the School Board Awards Program recognizes those school boards that have demonstrated outstanding dedication and rendered ethical service to the children of Texas, unquote. Your amazing dedication I have witnessed at several school board meetings, and now I would like to ask you a question. Is it ethical for you as a school board to mandate that students attend classes and participate in extracurricular activities under the names of people who chose not to value people of color? Please change the names of the high schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balbert. Okay, next we have Bobby Curtis. Good afternoon, Mr. Curtis.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll try and make it quick. I'm sorry to be here again. I was here the last time, and I just hate to see our city in turmoil, which it is. I grew up in this city, and it was the Starr of East Texas. Always has been. I don't know if it always will be, but it always was. And I was proud to be here, be raised here. Went to Robert E. Lee. My children went to Robert E. Lee. My grandkids went to Robert E. Lee. And I just hated that someone from out of the state of Texas came down here and stirred up a hornet's nest here in Tyler, but they did. And so now these people want us to change the names of the high schools. One thing I do want to inform the board members, though, if this passes and if the name change goes into effect, we're going to make sure that no taxpayers' money is used to change the signage, to change the uniforms, and all of that. That's going to be on, I guess, the people that vote to change the name or whoever will donate you money. And that's
Okay.
the last thing that I have to say is I've been giving money.
You're out of time, Mr. Curtis.
Okay.
I apologize. Thank you. Okay, Bob Westbrook. Hi, Mr. Westbrook.
Hi, good evening.
Evening.
Mr. President, honorable members of the school board, I am Bob Westbrook. I'm Tyler City Councilman for District 5. Regardless of the outcome here tonight, before I get into my speech, I just want each of you to know that you have my full support. Thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you do and the tough decisions that you're going to make. This evening, I'll be asking your support for the proposed TxDOT improvements to Old Jacksonville, including the overpass at the intersection of Old Jacksonville and Loop 323. As you complete your plans to reopen our schools, a key component is the safety and transportation of our children to and from TISD campuses. The Old Jacksonville corridor and the intersection at Loop 323 are a major artery and connector with currently 40,000 cars a day traveling north-south and almost 60,000 cars a day traveling east-west. Without the overpass, we will have Broadway-like gridlock. Our local grocery company currently opposes the overpass. If the overpass is dropped from the project, those funds, approximately $50 million, and this is big city engineering, will be lost forever. For the sake of our transport of our children, the transport of our children. I ask you to support the TxDOT construction of the Old Jacksonville improvements with the overpass at Loop 323. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Robert Wilson.
Afternoon. There is racism at TISD. TISD has teachers whose profile glorifies Malcolm X, a violent radical who promoted black supremacy and separation of black and white Americans. TISD is allowing teachers to glorify a promoter of black supremacy. You say you want to eliminate racial symbols, but allow this one. That's hypocritical. Ban the divisive slogan on campus, Black Lives Matter, created by anarchists and Marxists to divide us, as it clearly promotes one race over another. All lives matter. TISD should not allow special consideration for any one race over others, not even t-shirts promoting it. And outside, I heard some of that group shouting the word hate and also no peace. Social justice includes celebrating American Indian History Month, Irish History Month, Asian History Month, etc., and not only reserve a month to study just black history. TISD board racial equity means equity for every race, not just one. It should be all or none. Race equity also means there should not be scholarships such as the Faulkner Scholarship that are limited only to black or Hispanic kids. Caucasian and Asian students are not allowed to apply for these. TISD, this is reverse racism. Are you really serious about racial equity? Board, you need to go all the way when you make a change, including stopping the student groups that exclude Asians and Irish Americans, focusing on a singular race. It works both ways.
That's time. I appreciate you. Thanks, Mr. Wilson. Okay, Honor Neal. Afternoon, Honor.
My name is Honor Neal, class of 2021. 2 years ago, my classmate and friend Josh Silva started a chapter of the club Best Buddies at Robert E. Lee High School. Best Buddies is an international organization whose goal is to create connections between general education and special education students. Their slogan, inclusion lives here, but it doesn't. Inclusion cannot live and thrive in a place which was named for the sole purpose of exclusion. Inclusion cannot live and thrive in a place whose name represents a movement embedded in hate and discrimination. A new name, if you so choose to vote for it, will represent a new movement. A new name will represent your students, students who used their voices, their minds, and their individual skills to fight for progress, change, and inclusion. I ask you, as I have for the last few years, to listen to your students and change the name. Thank you.
Thank you, Honor. Hope Rhodes. Hi, Hope.
My name is Hope Rhodes, and I am in the graduating class of 2022. In the summer before my freshman year, I remember walking around all the cafeterias at Lee, looking at the clubs and organizations they wanted you to join. Everyone was talking to you, being so inclusive, and I remember being so impressed with that. But now, thinking back to my freshman self, and even myself a few years ago, I realized I was so naive and didn't truly realize the guts of Lee, the guts that were poisoned and isolating. I would tell people that the name was racist and some adults were, but the students were great. But it wasn't until social media accounts came out and I started listening to people of color stories that I realized that racism was not only the principle that Lee was founded on, but it's a principle that still continues to be glorified at that school. A school that is embarrassing for many to say that we attend. But you have the power to change that. You have the power to change the name, to not glorify racist idols, to show students that we don't honor people that couldn't respect everyone and give them basic human rights. So what are you waiting on? I urge you to vote today to change the name to something that we're proud of, something that isn't embarrassing, isolating, or racist. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope. Okay, next we have Caroline Crawford. Hi, Caroline.
Hi. Just down a little bit, I'm real short. Good evening. My name is Caroline Crawford. I graduated from Lee in 2019 and currently attend Mississippi State University as an honors student. One thing I experienced in college that Lee did not prepare me for is what it means to take pride in my school. When people ask me where I went to high school, I normally just say something along the lines of, "It's in Texas and you haven't heard of it." I'm embarrassed to put the name of my high school on resumes and applications. This does not mean that I hated my high school experience. In fact, some of my fondest memories and most important life lessons were learned during the long hours of marching band practice and rainy football games. I want to be as proud to tell people where I went to high school as I am to tell people that I go to Mississippi State, even though our football team went 3-5 in conference games and we lost to Tennessee. A veil of shame should not cloud the beauty of Tyler, Texas. Make the right decision in this evening and give our city schools and traditions that we can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, next we have Mission Bonner. Hi, Mission.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Mission. I'm a single black mother of 3 girls. My youngest 9, my eldest 15, attending Lee this fall. It is our public school. We have no choice. I myself had attended Robert E. Lee Elementary School in Southern California, and growing up that I remember in 5th grade, I gained common sense of understanding what an insult it was to the black community. This fired me up to not only ask questions concerning my black roots, but to also understand that racism is not okay and cannot be accepted. As Angela Davis quotes, "I can no longer accept the things that I cannot change. I am changing what I cannot accept." Our children should not deserve the right to honor Confederacy. Confederacy is pain. It is trauma. It is a constant reminder to white supremacy. So we are asking, no, we're not asking, we are demanding that you change the names of Robert E. Lee High School as well as John Tyler High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Mission. Okay, next we have Priceless Bonner. Make sure we lower that mic so we can hear you. There you go.
Hi, my name is Priceless Bonner. I came to fight for justice and to change the name of Robert E. Lee High School. Almost everyone in Tyler has had a name of what to change the name of Robert E. Lee High School to. But it could just be named Freedom and Justice High. Or it could be named something we can all agree to. Like random. Not a person, but something creative. I, Priceless Bonner, will never honor racism, and that's what the Founding Fathers stood for. Thank you.
Thank you, Priceless. Okay, we have Terry Bonner next. Hi, Terry.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Good evening. I am a father of 5, single father, and I just wanted, and educated in part by TISD. I just wanted to kind of maybe bring to light how it may feel to be educated in about, the 5th grade on Civil War and kind of getting a grasp on who won, who lost. Things of that nature, and what the Confederacy stood for and what the Union stood for, and then to go to a middle school named after a Confederate, possibly, and then from there go to a high school, 2 high schools named after Confederate soldiers and otherwise. The symbolism that gives a young black man of color or a young person of color. I'm in agreement with a wise man who says that it is never a good thing to name a school after a person. And also,
10 seconds.
yes, sir. And also, Tyler, a lot of people say it's not racist. They don't have to call you a racial slur when it's painted all over the walls. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Jessica Adams. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, elected school board members. You have such an amazing opportunity today. Tyler, Texas has a reputation for being on the wrong side of history. And as the people that our community has elected to be on the school board, you have the ability today to finally push this city to the right side of history, to finally correct years of pain in students that feel marginalized in your school. You have that opportunity not to erase history, not to change it, but to make history. And as elected school board members, you've had parents pleading with you over the last month and longer, since 1970, and this problem's not going away ever until you vote yes. And I ask that you do so we don't have to vote you out. You've done a very good job thus far. I ask that you put your students first and change these names. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, we have Tim Goders. How you doing, Tim?
Good evening.
Evening.
In consideration of the school board's difficult mission here tonight, I want to quote from the Bible. "My people perish for a lack of knowledge." Ironically, there are two coordinating things here that Robert E. Lee himself and Black Lives Matter organization have two things in common. Both of them did not want Confederate generals to be memorialized in statues, and probably just as well in the names of their schools. Quoting Robert E. Lee himself, in 1869, Lee declined the invitation to attend and wrote a letter about the proposed event of a reconciliation ceremony at Gettysburg, the site of 51,000 casualties. He said, "I think it wiser, moreover, not to keep open the sores of war, but to follow the examples of nations who endeavor to obliterate the marks of civil strife, commit to oblivion the feelings engendered." Also, ironically, the leadership of the Confederacy and the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, Susan Rosenberg, have both waged war against the United States government. Rosenberg is a convicted domestic terrorist, and according to a contemporaneous FBI report, which stated Rosenberg openly advocated to overthrow the U.S. government through armed struggle and use of violence, bombing the U.S. Capitol, National War College, and the New York Patrolmen's Benevolent Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, we have James Volberding. How are you doing, Mr. Volberding?
Thank you very much, sir. Good evening, trustees. It is an honor to appear before the board. As mentioned, my name is James Volberding. Let me offer two practical reasons for you to change the names of both high schools. First, it is going to happen eventually. Our country is changing for the better in many respects, whether now or later. This board will eventually change the names. It is better to do it now. Secondly, sir, the city and the county spend large sums of money in an effort building Tyler's brand and marketing Tyler as a bright place for investment, living, education, and success. That our two high schools are still named after Confederate leaders runs counter to those efforts. Unless the board changes the names, there may eventually be national coverage of Tyler as the last holdout for the Confederacy. This is not the message to send to potential investors, executives, developers, or highly skilled individuals in research and medicine who are considering Tyler. Now is the time. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Julie Gobble. Hi, Julie.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're each well tonight, and I really appreciate that you called this meeting to hear everyone speak once more and to cast a vote on the changing of the names of Robert E. Lee and John Tyler. The story of these schools began in 1958, when we were on the cusp as a country of the ruling of Brown versus Board of Education, which would have desegregated our education facilities. And in that moment in 1958, rather than welcoming the integration of black and brown students into the halls of these schools, they named it Robert E. Lee, a Confederate war hero, a slave owner, and someone who had a long and violent history with people of color, who fought to keep them enslaved. That story, I hope, is coming to a happy ending this evening. Each of you have the unique opportunity to change Tyler for the better. Not just today, not just tomorrow, but for every single person of color who will move in this town, who is born in this town, and will have to stay in this town. And not only will you change their life, you will change the trajectory of their education, their mental well-being, and their lives. And I so appreciate you being here, and I hope you will make the best decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, we have Deborah Rowden. Hi, Miss Rowden.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your time today. I was a graduate of '66 from Lee, and comes to mind of the people that come to our country that immigrate. When they come here, they're educated in our history and the way our laws are built between local, county, state, federal levels. They're taught the Declaration of Independence. They're taught about our flag's history. They're taught about all history, basically, and the Constitution. They're also taught how to assimilate into America without changing it. They're welcome to bring their heritage, and we will respect them if they respect us. Right now, there is a cancel culture movement that has infringed on all our history. It's a page out of Soloninsky's Socialism book on how to dominate a country that's destroyed their history. Take it out. And the fundamental
10 seconds.
transformation of America was begun by Obama, basically, and that's what he ran on his first campaign. And they are still trying to fundamentally.
You're out of time.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I had a lot more.
I know. Thank you.
But thank you for letting me get that far.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am, Miss Rowden. Thank you. Exit the other way. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ricky Garner. How you doing, Mr. Garner?
Good evening,
Evening.
President Washington and school board members. I'm doing wonderful. First thing I'd like to do is thank all of you so much for your service to our community. It does not go unnoticed, the time that you give and the sacrifice that you give to lead our children in the school district, and we certainly appreciate that. To that end, I know that this is not an easy decision that you're faced with tonight, but I would also submit to you that nothing ever in life that is worthwhile is ever easy. Nothing that has happened in our nation, in our country, that has been transformative, that has been worthwhile, has ever been easy. And so I ask you tonight, as a 1983 graduate of John Tyler High School, to please, by all means, change the names of these high schools so that our city can realize our full potential as a community. Right now, our children cannot ascend to the places that we would love for them to go because of this now worldwide stigma that we have. And it's not just now, it's been here, but now there is no better time than right now to make this change. And so I ask you, I beg of you to please don't let this moment pass. Don't miss this moment to change the course of our city. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Garner. Okay, we have Michael Starr. How you doing, Mr. Starr?
Fine, thank you. President Washman, members of the board. I'm Michael Starr. My wife Sarah and I moved to Tyler 30 years ago, and all three of our children have graduated from Lee High School. The 1957-58 school board named its new all-white high school to send a demoralizing message from the community's majority to its black minority. You're not welcome here. You need to stay in your place. For Tyler and its schools, following our better angels should begin with how we treat our children. No student anywhere should be required to attend a school that was named for the purpose of making anyone feel diminished. No more delay. Please, change the name.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Okay, we have Vera Moore. Good evening, Mrs. Moore.
Good evening. My name is Vera Moore. I was born and raised in Tyler. I have served on the board of Habitat for Humanity on several occasions, the board of PATH. I currently serve on the Women's Fund. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, which does community projects around Tyler. I served many years on the Women in Tyler Planning Committee. So, what does that have to do with anything? Nothing. I share it with you to convey to you that I am invested in and committed to Tyler. And because of that, I want what is best for her. Please know that I am not speaking for or on behalf of any of the organizations that I mentioned. I'm speaking for Vera. Robert E. Lee's name needs to be changed. It is a name that is put in place to honor a traitor who led a treacherous rebellion against the United States in an effort to maintain slavery. If he had been successful, African American students would not be able to attend Robert E. Lee.
That's time, Miss Moore.
Oh!
I know. Thank you for coming out, though.
Change the name.
Okay. Enrique A. Salazar. Good evening, Mr. Salazar.
Good evening, sir. Hello, board members. We support your decision today, whatever the outcome is. I would like to express my concern with any appropriated funds being considered for this change. Instead, we can use them for adult education programs and have our dual language programs in all elementary schools. We can also provide a raise or a temporary raise for performing teachers that are outstanding, and assist them with any supplies needed in class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Salazar. Okay. We have Sandra Knowles Mast. Good evening, Mrs. Mast.
Good evening. Do I start now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Our class, I'm sorry, I'm for the name change of both schools. It was my understanding that 15,000 people signed the petition for the name change. I went through the 1970 experience of integration of Tyler ISD. I was part of the last 10th grade class of E.J. Scott. I graduated class 1972 JT. The members of my class was very excited and looking forward to attending and graduating from E.J. Scott. By the end of the year, we had decided on cheerleaders,
drum majors, class officers, and other officers for the coming year. And we were excited about our junior year. E.J. Scott was an awesome school. We had awesome teachers, and at the end of the year, we left for vacation, and when we came back, we found out that the school was closed. So we lost the whole school, not just the name. Some of our classmates were, I guess I'm losing my time.
It goes by quick.
I'm sorry, what?
That's okay. I said it goes by quick. I understand.
Yeah. Well, I'm for the name change for both schools.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mast. Okay, next we have Angela Smallwood. Hi, Ms. Smallwood.
Hello. I'm actually speaking on behalf of Barrett Breedlove, who is serving our country right now. There's a radical cancel culture revolution going on right now in this country, taking an eraser to this nation. We have already seen the fruits of this movement, and clearly it's not about race. It is clear that the same movement is now at our doorstep. We've watched from the safety of our community thinking not here, but it is here. Although maybe more peaceful, this issue is not about local high schools, Robert E. Lee, or the nation's 10th president, John Tyler, our town's namesake. It's about getting a foothold. This movement seeks to capitalize on the mainstream media's divisive narrative, searching far and wide to resurrect history's past sins and racism for political gain. Regardless of what city officials are saying or what other cities and towns are doing, this is the people's decision. The decision is permanent and should not be made during this emotional, charged, and highly disruptive times, nor should it be made in response to intimidation tactics, which you and I have both been on the personal receiving end of. Solutions for the district and upcoming fall semester should be the priority. Our kids need to be in school, developing academically, socially, and physically. This issue would suck the oxygen out of the room at a terrible time for our community. Everyone in this room knows this is a slippery slope. Don't let this proceed on your watch.
Thank you, Ms. Smallwood. Appreciate it. Okay, next we have Ashton Orovitz III. Or, let's see, okay, maybe Bob Brewer. Okay. Okay. Let's go with Abriel Jackson. Hi, Ms. Jackson.
Hello. A pandemic is going on and we got a new school, but yet we are still back at this issue to change the name. So just think this issue is so bad that a pandemic couldn't distract us from it. I'm not gonna school you guys about Robert Lee. We all know about him. I think the problem that you guys should look at is that it's not only a Confederacy stronghold on our school, it's also the old way of things on our school. I'm in the band and we play old songs. We do not play modern songs. We you know, it's not enjoyment for us. Just when you, and also change the name, but please give it a name that makes us feel like we didn't make a mistake. That makes us feel like we're not dumb for wanting difference at our school. Yes, that's all I have. Just please don't let the old ways prevail at the school. It's 2020. We need so much reform. So change the name. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Okay, we have Charles F. Parks III. How you doing, Mr. Parks?
Good evening. esteemed school board members. I've spoken to you before, so you know my stance, you know what my shirt says, so I won't belabor the point of what side I'm on. I even recommended names to you the last time I spoke, and I'm sure you have notes somewhere that you might be able to refer to. So I ask only this, that you take peace and think long and hard about the name that you would select. It should inspire, as Tyler is the East Texas regional leader, and as Tyler goes, so will so many counties around it. Will it inspire arts, science, mathematics, engineering? Look to names that will inspire learning, that will launch a fleet of children on a voyage of discovery. I want to thank you in advance for whatever decision that you make. May God keep you, God bless, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Okay, next we have Corey Howard. How you doing, Corey?
Good, Wade. All right, well, thank you for letting us speak again tonight, and thank you so much for calling this special meeting. I know that you didn't have to do that, but you did, so I'm glad that you guys did. I went to Bell, Moore, then Lee. All three of those schools are no longer there, and they no longer exist. The classrooms that I took are no longer there, but in their place are these big, beautiful buildings that you guys helped build, and that's something that you should be so, so proud of. All these beautiful buildings here. That's something your grandkids can tell their grandkids about, that my grandfather and grandmother helped build that. But that should be the legacy of this school board, but unfortunately, the legacy of this school board is gonna be based on what you decide to do tonight. I really hope that you stand on the right side of history and vote to change the names of both the schools. Thank you for hearing us today. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Corey. Okay, next we have Ken Mast. How you doing, Ken?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Oh, y'all want to hear my concern? All right.
We're
How
ready
y'all
for
doing? I'm part of the class of '96. Went to John Tyler. Been here, born and raised, and everything. I know everybody here probably know exactly what we're here for. You probably hear everybody outside. I'm pretty sure you got the concept. Changing the name of the school, I know it was about Robbie E. Lee and everything, and you know, considering changing John Tyler. I'm for both. I think we all know what both represented. It didn't represent anything positive. I think we need to change the name of the schools to somebody that is positive. I mean, we got Earl Campbell, you got Brookshires, you got Birdfield, you got a lot of people here in Tyler that we can name our school after. We don't have to sit here and focus on the negative and start focusing on positive. We spent too many years focusing on negativity. We could have changed this a long time ago, but we've been dragging our feet. The people that are supposed to be on this board should have changed it a long time ago. Now it's your chance. You should be able to look outside and tell what people want. You've been looking at TV, you know what people want. Give people what they're looking for. That's just my input.
Thank you, Mr. Mass. Okay, next we have Sherry Woods. Okay. Hi, Ms. Woods.
Hello. Thank you for letting me speak. I know I have to talk quickly. When I moved to Tyler 5 or 6 years ago, I was absolutely shocked to see a high school named Robert E. Lee. Lee lost the war. Only in the South do we want to seem to exalt people who lost. I have a degree in history. One of my professors said something that kind of made me stop and, what? She said, you cannot judge events of the past using today's values. And I didn't quite understand what she meant, but now I do. When I have been reading about the history of Robert E. Lee, the school, The school was founded in 1958. And at that time, it was voted to name the new school Robert E. Lee. What was going on in 1958? The 9 students in Little Rock had already dared to go to school. Civil Rights Act of 1957 had just been passed. I think it's odd that we pick somebody fighting against all of those things to be the name of a school. He lost, the war's over, let's move on.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Okay, Laura Rhodes. On up to the podium, Ms. Rhodes. How you doing?
Hi there. I'm here tonight to ask for a change for both names of the high schools. I'm here because I want a better education for all of our students. And by changing the names, we're going to demonstrate that this district stands for all the students, not just some of them. By changing the names, we're going to erase the symbols of hate and fear that many of our students see on a daily basis. Changing the names will break ties with men who did not live in this community and only were honored as a result of desegregation orders. Changing the names will not erase any good memories that former students may have had. Those experiences, wonderful teachers, strong friendships, they don't rely on that name. They can continue to hold pride in their educations. Some people in this community seem to fear this change as if their own impact, their own voice, or their own heritage will be erased, and that's simply not the case. Changing the name will not remove influence from community members. It will not remove heritage from the people in the community. It's only a symptom of a larger issue in our community. What changing the name will do is draw a line in the sand that will demonstrate that this board will not support racist policies in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Okay, we're circling back to Bob Brewer. Okay, Bob, how you doing? You'll have 1 minute and 20 seconds from when you open your mouth.
You guys need to come join us sometime. We could have avoided this uncomfortable situation if only you were teaching the law you're required to hold a program for each September between September 12th and 19th this year. If you would like me to provide a half-day program on one of those Saturdays, I can accommodate you with your provision of airtime on TISD TV or at one of the multiple auditoriums of your choosing. The law I'm talking about is Constitution Week, and if we were abiding by page 1, second sentence of the entirety of U.S. law, we wouldn't be having this right now. Our first law is summarized and summarizes the intent of America, the equality at creation and God-given unalienable rights. If those we elect that knew the purpose of those words, every parent would have a choice to send their student to a school of their choosing, and as taxpayers, we would not have to pay for education that over the years has removed the 10,000 books that were commissioned for schools by 17 signers of the Constitution. Those books were Bibles. If we wanted to go to a school that wasn't named JT or Robert E. Lee, we would have the choice to pick where to go. And
that's time,
you would not
Mr.
be
Brewer.
forced with the choice that you are having tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Other way, man. Nope. Oh, sorry about that. Yep. Sorry, Mr. Brewer, that was my bad. Okay, Ashton Orovitz, the third. How you doing, Mr. Orovitz?
Good day, how are you? Good. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm not going to take much of your time because the last time we went through this, I gave you a lot of facts and figures on why we shouldn't be doing this. I'm still against why we shouldn't be doing it. The only thing I can commend you on is this time you're not being quite as hypercritical because you're going to change both names if you do. But my question is, where do we go from here? The obvious ones are Hubbard, Birdwell, Hogg, Dixie, and there's a lot of other schools that are named after Confederate officers or segregationists. If you want to change names of school, practically every school that was named before 1960 here was at least a segregationist. And so where are you going to go with this? What is the end game? I also think that if you do change the names, and I'm against it, I think the best thing is to do nothing. I hope you do not use our tax money. I don't think the high schools would have passed the bond issue if you'd known, or if we'd known that you were going to change the name. And I think what will happen if you do change the name is it's going to be a long time until the bond issue gets passed in this city. I represent a lot of people that don't want to come here. And so thank you for your time, and good night.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Orovitz. Okay, Naricia Ross. Apologies if I mispronounced your first name.
How did you say it?
I couldn't tell if that's an
start.
R. I said Narisha.
They started my time.
No, start it over.
Okay.
Start over. I'll call you Miss Ross. How's that?
My name is Nitisia Poe Ross, Tyler ISD School Board. The last time I stood before you, I spoke to you about the power of a name. Today, I will speak about change. The seats that you are sitting in right now are not meant to be a place of comfort, rather a place where change begins. Vice President Martinez, Mr. Newsom, Ms. Atkins, and Dr. Nation, you all know that there was a time in this country where some would have said that you were unfit to serve on this board because of the color of your skin or your gender. But yet, you are here. You are here because although change is uncomfortable and egos are fragile, a group of individuals mustered up the courage to not only proclaim that you deserve your seats, but they made room for you. You see, this board is a result of changed minds and changed hearts. So I say to you, change is not only important, but it's necessary. I urge you to hold steadily strong and understand that you have a monumental change to be at the forefront of change. So I challenge you, Tyler ISD School Board, to change the names. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Okay, next up we have Bill Williamson. How you doing, Mr. Williamson?
Thank y'all for hearing us all out. She must be taller than I am. Anyway, I'm from Tyler. I went to Tyler schools, Birdwell, Pete, Bell, Moore, John Tyler. My son graduated with a scholarship from Lee. And I guess I need to come out of the Confederate closet and say that I've been tested DNA twice. I'm an ancestor of Robert E. Lee, and I think he'd be proud to have that name for his high school. However, if it's detrimental to the students that go there, I don't think he would be upset with changing it. So whatever keeps the peace, I'm all for it. As far as John Tyler, that was my school. I was an opera student. I didn't have the best grades. I was kind of nerdy, wasn't an athlete, played in the band, but I had all this faculty that stood behind me, and they promoted me in the arts. And I won everything you could win in the arts at John Tyler. Up to state level, I got scholarships, and I noticed in the hall y'all have all the Caldwell Arts.
You got up. You're out of time,
in the
man.
hallway. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Anyway,
it's all right.
In the foyer of the Caldwell School is a portrait of D.K. and Lottie Caldwell. I did that.
All right.
So I was at that level. Anyway, I have John Tyler to thank for that. In return,
Thank you.
I got into sculpture. I helped build Caldwell Zoo, Discovery Science Place.
All right, man. Hey, you're out of time.
All that good stuff. What I was
Thank
going
you.
to say is, I'm very proud of John Tyler, and I would like for John Tyler to keep its name.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. My kids go to Caldwell, and we see that every day. We walk them in. Okay, next up we have Sylvia Moores. Hi, Ms. Moores.
Hi there. First of all, I want to thank the Tyler ISD Board for allowing me this moment to speak. My name is Sylvia Morse. I am an artist and activist for Black Lives Matters. I'm here to ask the board to open their hearts and minds by doing the right thing. We live in the United States, not the Confederate States. The time is now. Please change the name.
Thank you, Ms. Moores.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Paul Hoyt. Hi, Paul.
Good afternoon, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing me to speak on this issue. In spite of the fervor and ire that it seems to have raised, there's a lovely story of Robert E. Lee in the postbellum South. When he was standing in line for communion, before him there were a number of fellow parishioners, men, women, and children. Many of them were black. And after the service, a woman came up to him and said, "General Lee, I'm so sorry that you had to stand in line behind those people." And he, in his gentle but at the same time fierce manner, turned upon her and said, "Madam, there is room for everyone, even this sinner at the foot of the cross." It was General Lee who, following the war, was president of Washington University, and during that time insisted that black students across the nation be further educated. He insisted that any whites who harassed or persecuted blacks be prosecuted under the law and were immediately expelled from his university. And so I appeal to you in the name of Robert E. Lee, who was a remarkable educator, who advanced the cause of peace and unity in this country to such an extent that President Grant invited him to the White House and hailed him as a national hero in the cause of unity. But most importantly, it is in the name of Christ that I ask you to maintain this man's name, for if we lose the rock of forgiveness and repentance for our own past, then there is nothing upon which we may stand.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyt.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Wiley Smith. Good evening, Mr. Smith.
Hi. Well, I'm Wiley Smith. I graduated from John Tyler High School in 1961. My wife graduated from Robert E. Lee High School in 1964. We've spent all of our lives in Tyler, except for 10 years we lived in Dallas. We're back, and we're here until we die. So you've heard from me before in 2018, and you've received an email from me yesterday. But I have some other words for you and for whoever else is listening. I'm against any and all name changes, except in business buyouts and in marriages and such as that. The tail should never wag the dog. The dog always wags the tail. He's always in charge. The mobs should not rule our cities, our police, our mayors, or our school boards. You know what it's time for? It's time to stop school board activism here and all over our state in their rush to change names. Please, just cancel the politics.
Thank you, Mr.
If
Smith.
any of you are principals in a 501c3, you know that you have to guard what you say and how you say it, or you could possibly cause that organization to lose their tax-exempt status.
Okay. Thanks, man. You're out of time. Appreciate you, Mr. Smith. Okay. Up next, we have Jessica Taylor. How you doing, Ms. Taylor?
I'm good, thank you. Hello, yes, I'm Jessica Taylor. I'm a Rice Hubbard Lee graduate class of 2003, and I mostly wanted to come out and just to say, and I have kids in the district. I'm a taxpayer too, and I believe that it's time for the schools to change their name. During my time at Robert E. Lee, I don't remember any instances of overt racism, but we all know that Robert E. Lee is a symbol of the Confederate, and that a lot of other people have other memories and thoughts when they think of Robert E. Lee, and so I think it's important to validate their opinions and their thoughts, and this isn't a choice that as a white woman, my experiences aren't what's the most important here. I believe that the name is going to change just with the changes we've seen across the country. I think it's just a matter of when, and I believe as a school board that you can make this decision now so that we don't keep coming back to it time and time again. Everyone is very passionate, and I believe we'll be back. Philippians 2:3 says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves." And I just ask that you think of all students at TISD when you make this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, we have Matt Hendon up next. Okay. Do we have a Ms. Sinville? Hi.
Hello. Hello, my name is Saray Sinville, and I'm going to graduate from Lee in 2021. I would just like to take this time to truly thank you all for taking the time to listen to everyone speak today. I really hope that all of these voices have inspired you to make necessary changes in our community. The student body at Lee is depending on you to make this monumental decision that not only changes the title of our school, but also creates positive cultural changes in our community as well. We have shared our stories, we have made our voices heard, and we have communicated our needs to you all as members of the school board and the faces of our school district. It is up to you all to listen to these stories, voices, and needs and make the decision for change. You all are the last step towards justice, and we want that justice today. Thank you so much for everything you have done for our school. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saray. Okay, and our last speaker for the evening is Jordan Williams. Good evening, Jordan.
Yes, sir. Hi, my name is Jordan Williams. I'm a 9th grader, and I do genealogy as a hobby. And in doing genealogy, I found like white people on my branch. And tracing that, I found Confederate ancestors, and even though I have Confederate ancestors, I don't believe they should have monuments or schools named after them, and so many other people in genealogy. If God teaches us to love one another, why do you condone school names based on hate? Robert E. Lee was a traitor to our country, so why do we still have monuments and schools named after him? I'm asking you to please change the names of JT and Robert E. Lee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Okay, so we have gotten through the public comment portion of our meeting, and I'm going to propose just a 5-minute kind of stretch your legs, bathroom if you need it, break, and then we'll reconvene in 5. So hearing no objections, we're going to do that. Thank you. Okay, we're going to gavel back in and get down to the business of what is on the agenda. Our action item tonight is to discussion and possible action to adjust the names of Robert E. Lee High School and John Tyler High School, including associated cost, and if the board decides to adjust, discussion and possible action to begin a process to identify and choose new names. So there's a few parts of this, and one that I think we want to address coming out of the gates, Dr. Crawford, is the cost piece of this. I know a couple of board members have expressed interest in you kind of walking us through what you think might be those costs. So I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. President. Washman. Let me put a couple of disclaimers on this before. We went through this process 2 years ago and came up with a number and submitted that. And there was a little bit of concern about that, of whether or not those numbers were accurate or not. And I do want to go on and say that as we go to tonight, just as I said last time, it's estimation. You know, I want to be very clear about that to the public and the school board, that we don't have any quotes from a vendor of about what a school name jersey may cost. We can ballpark it for sure, and we've done our best to estimate that. Also, we've had 2 years since we had this last conversation. We've been sensitive to what we've ordered. We've been sensitive to, and you'll see this tonight, we've been sensitive to what the construction has occurred since that time that we last presented this. And so as I provide that disclaimer, I just want to make sure that we're all clear that as we go through this, if the board decides to move through with its with the change of the high school names, that just as we always do, we will do this in a very fiscally conservative manner. We hope that we'll do it in an economical way, and we also hope that folks understand that there needs to be a grace period in here as well. That this thing will not transpire overnight, because there is a lot of things to do here. My friends in Northeast ISD that went through this a few years ago, spoke with them prior to tonight, and my friends there said that it took them a year to transition through this. They were also able to document that. Another disclaimer that I'll provide tonight is, as we go through this, I've got both high school principals here tonight, there will be things that come up and surprise us that we didn't even know about. And certainly tonight is not an end-all to everything that we've been able to go find that might be eligible for that transition. And so I want to make sure that that disclaimer is said before we get into this conversation, and before we have Tim Loper, our Director of Facilities, Director of Athletics, Greg Priest, and Director of Visual Performing Arts, Sandy Newton, present to the board tonight, because that's where most of this lies, are in facilities and apparel, cloth, some equipment, if I'm not mistaken, as we go through this. So I want to make sure that in defense of our staff, that we understand that this project was put on us with about a month's advance notice, maybe, or less, and it's not perfect, just like the last one wasn't perfect. And so I hope we can give our folks that are going to speak to us tonight, present to us tonight, some grace as we question them, as opposed to maybe questioning them in regard to the accuracy of what they've put together. And I know there was some of that, as was some of the other issues that happened the last time that we talked about this, in regard to folks trying to use numbers, in support of either way on this. So just want to make sure we get ahead of that before we actually get into this conversation, because again, there will be things that do pop up on us and surprise us. We do think we have numbers for you tonight that do show an effort to be a little bit more sensitive to the issues that were brought forward in 2018. And I think Coach Priest and Miss Newton and Mr. Loper will be able to explain that a whole lot better than I am at this time. So I'd like to get on with this conversation. You do have at your place some narratives, some anecdotal summaries of these different departments that we have. You also have some preliminary cost estimates. Again, these are cost estimates for construction needs as far as the facilities goes. And then we also have in front of you some opportunities to look at maybe what athletic apparel would cost as well. We think those three things are possibly in the way of what y'all are considering tonight, the most influential as far as monetary matters goes. Again, things that we don't know about, we can't bring to you tonight. We've done the best we possibly could. We've got the high school principals here tonight to listen to what y'all have to say and the questions that you're asking, and the understanding that as we go through this, we may wind up stumbling upon something that's not included in tonight that might be a cost. So let's go ahead and get started tonight with that, if you don't mind. What's your preference on who goes first?
I don't care one bit, Marty. It's
Okay.
just whatever you.
Ms. Newton, you're up first. You may say, thank you, let me get out of the way. So if you'll get to the table, yeah, absolutely, Sandy. Thank you. And I'll go ahead and start off your portion of the conversation with an example. This year, this is the cycle year for John Tyler's band uniforms. And I think just go ahead and take us through, started with that process, Sandy, in regard to what we ordered this year, what the cost was that was already in the budget because they were up for new uniforms this year. In fact, I think they were up last year, but we held off a year just for budgetary reasons and timing. I think we couldn't get the uniforms in time for marching season last year, so we delayed it one more year.
And kind of in conjunction with the new campus.
Correct. Yeah, kind of a cool thing to do as far as moving in. And we also waited on that because of our storage that's actually been put into the new campuses. That's incredible. World-class storage that we've provided for our fine arts kids, our band kids, and we wanted to make sure we got those pristine new uniforms to be able to put them in the pristine storage units that we have as well. So go ahead and start with your portion here, and I'll help you as you go along the way.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Thank you for listening. Fine arts answer to the monetary portion of this is quite different this time around than it was the first because of the scheduled uniform replacement for John Tyler High School. I think it's on the board agenda to approve those at the next meeting. And then for the Robert E. Lee uniforms, those are due to come up with the next budget. The expense associated with replacing those is approximately $130,000 on the rotation. So that immediately, if you take the expense, which are already budgeted into the rotation for the school's budget, for both of those to be replaced, that's a considerable amount of money that it takes out of the equation of changing the name. Other things that come along are rewrapping the trailers for both bands if they go to various events. Well, they're up for those to be rewrapped anyway, giving the new campuses and the new mascots. So that's kind of taking place as anyway. Parade banners, that's another thing that they're already scheduled to be replaced. When I went back and spent a little bit more due diligence with the cases for the musical instruments, they're marked in a variety of ways. They're stenciled, they're written on with paint pens, some are large, some are small. That's a variable that I'll have to work with on how to remove those or cover those. I don't think that's going to be an exorbitant expense. I think that's going to be something that can be handled relatively reasonable. As new instruments have been purchased, they are not labeled. They are given a fixed assets tag so that that's non-issue for the newest instruments that have been purchased. I'm trying to think what else. Music library, I think an easy fix for all of the library that has been labeled either Robert E. Lee or John Tyler, we could put a sticker over those. Not to mention some of the programs have gone digital. So many of those pieces of music have been digitally cataloged. And then there are music stands and chairs that all had been labeled for both of the high schools, but with the new builds of the high schools, those have not been labeled. So a lot of the costs have been mitigated over the last couple of years so that it's minimal for fine arts.
Yeah, again, I think if you reflect back to 2018, the questions that we had were, is this an immediate thing if that were to have happened then versus a phase-in? We're giving some time as we go along. So I think that, we've done a pretty good job with that. On the band furniture, orchestra furniture, are those going to get barcodes as well? I'm sure they will.
I would
won't they,
assume so.
Eventually, yeah, okay.
That is a very good point, Dr. Crawford. When we initiated this the first time, the school year was already underway. Many things had already been purchased, and we're in a position right now where the school year hasn't started, and so many things have not been ordered for the upcoming year. So we can get in front of that instead of trying to make up for things that had already been purchased.
And one more thing is, I think that we said this last time, or at least I spoke individually to some of you on, if you were to embark upon this, it's going to depend upon your standard. And I think I even made the statement that we're going to put our kids in good stuff because they deserve it. But as far as cases go, if it's in good shape, there's no reason to throw that out. If we need to do some type of treatment on something on top of it, or a paint pen or something, use some chemicals to take it off, we can. It's really what the tolerance is of what y'all expect of us, and what type of standards of quality that you expect for our students as well. And so I think that's one thing that you got to understand is we're not going to throw just a case out, because those are expensive.
Very.
If it still locks, if it still closes, if it still has the hinges on it, that we'll be able to effectively figure out what we can do, as long as y'all give us, some preferences or guidances, or just a little bit of trust on being able to handle this if it gets to that point.
Okay.
Any questions for
Board,
VPA?
any questions for VPA?
I do have a question. Just want to confirm. So if I understand what you've reported here, that if you exclude the items that we would normally be replacing this year, if you exclude the items that, because we're moving into new school buildings, have already been replaced, then really the cost that you're talking about here is the cost for stickers for music, and however you want to treat the music cases, whether that's spray paint or pen or a sticker of some sort. That's really the extent of the cost. When you boil all that down, that's really what we're talking about here for VPA, with the caveats that Dr. Crawford mentioned of this is a high-level analysis, and as we get into this, we're likely to find other things. But as you present it here, we're talking about the cost of spray paint or some other way to change music cases, plus stickers on music, right?
Yes.
Okay. That was my only question.
With the caveat that as you mentioned, that as we dig deeper into this, I don't anticipate anything expensive or overwhelming, but obviously with that caveat.
Okay.
Yeah, if we were to get there, Reverend Hager, to the point to where we needed to conduct this exercise, one thing I did learn from talking to our friends in other school systems that have gone through this is certainly we want to make sure we do a good accounting of whatever we do. And that way it can provide a cost or analysis about what it did cost. I know the last number that was put there, I think I pretty much said the same thing, that whatever we get to, we'll do stuff that's extremely economical, but we won't try to sacrifice the quality of what we're providing for our students. So I think, some of the things in here are the banners that we've talked about in theater as well, and those are pretty much all over the place. I don't think we're recommending to replace those. Is that correct, Sandy?
That's correct. I think with the new build, we decided not to necessarily hang those up, but preserve those in another manner.
Yeah. Certainly digitalizing some of that stuff for historical references is something I think we're very interested in. We've done that with other things as well. When you've had drill teams for 65, almost 70 years now, you run out of space. I don't care what new facilities you build and whatnot. So digitizing those is an example of something that we can do to continue to honor all of the young ladies and young men that have gone through all of our programs as well, instead of just putting trophy after trophy after trophy up there for a long time that Collect does. So, or pictures. So I think that we've got a very clean and classy way that we're going to go about doing some of that preservation as well.
Absolutely. It varies from instrument to instrument. Usually the case comes with the instrument, or we get a case in conjunction with the instrument. Instruments last us a good long time. So we have instruments we've had for, I would almost say, decades. So it's far and few between. I shouldn't say far and few between. We replace our instruments, but with all the new ones that we've purchased, there's an asset tag. There's not a name of a school on it. So the cases last for a while.
Of course, the cases get beat up. Instruments get beat
Yes.
up. Sometimes instruments get lost. We don't like that, but I think that that's some of the things that we have to go through. One more thing about band. Take us through band uniforms. What's the normal cycle for that? And of course, everybody, it's going to inflate. It's always going to cost more the next time around to get the newest look, the newest uniform, the best technology as far as the coolness or the warmth. What's your cycle on the band uniforms?
Band uniforms are usually replaced every 7 to 10 years, depending on the wear of the uniform. And in this case, it was closer to 10 years because we had the newer campuses. So it was all in conjunction with the new campuses. This time they're running in the ballpark of about $130,000, $140,000.
And let's be clear, that's not bond money that's buying those uniforms, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think at Lee they've got some stencil on there, some stitching. Is that right, Dr. C? What's our philosophy on? And maybe Dan can answer this if you've talked to Mr. Labordis. What's our strategy on that if we go down that path? If that's something that we need to take care of, what's the strategy on that?
Are you talking about purchasing new ones?
Nope. I'm talking about if they've got the lettering on there. What's the strategy on that to continue to use those uniforms for this next year until Lee gets to their rotation?
We were waiting on a decision tonight on what finally came out of it and the overall timeline before we were going to decide what specifically to do with that.
Okay.
We don't want to jump the gun on anything too quick, depending on how long this process does take if the vote is made to change the name. So we're kind of in that sit and wait and see. We talked about both a couple of options with that, and then we're kind of.
So you're awaiting guidance?
We're awaiting guidance.
That's like a really hot term right now for the last 5 or 6 months. We're waiting for more guidance, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Dr. Crawford, the Robert E. Lee uniforms, band uniforms are up for adoption in September anyway. We're just going for the new budget in September.
Sure.
We were already going to get new ones for Robert E. Lee and John Tyler.
But marching season for this year will be with the current uniforms that do have some type of stitching on there, or I don't know what it is. Yeah.
The one option is looking at buying something else that the kids could use, because we're waiting here from UIL as well on what our marching season will look like.
Yes.
Because we may be able to use an alternative to a full uniform or something else the kids can use for this year, because we're still waiting on guidance on what that marching season will look like.
Yes.
We can't use the uniforms probably anyway because they reuse them. So we're probably going to have to do something different this year anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Like have you pants or something, regardless of what we do with the name, just because of COVID.
And that's guidance right now in regard to marching band about
It
what
has to do with sharing of supplies and all those kinds of things. So from what I understand, the uniforms are dispersed. They're used for a marching performance. They're then they're returned, and then they would all be housed together. And given current guidelines, we really can't do that. They have to have something a student brings with them and takes home.
Okay, let's pretend that tomorrow we don't have to mess with this stuff anymore. Okay? What's the strategy there? Let's say we're full marching band in the fall. Those guidelines are recommendations, 'cause that's what we're talking about is recommendations, not shalls. It's mays. And we're full marching season, we're in uniform. What's the strategy there if the guidance is that we're not gonna have the stitching on, the 3 little letters on there? What are we gonna do? Okay.
Yes.
I was trying to get you to that.
Yes, probably looking at putting a patch over it.
Okay. Okay. Any
So that
estimate?
would-
Any estimate on that? $5 plus labor?
Depends on how many you order. You can get a bulk order there.
Okay.
When we looked 2 years ago, there was somewhere between $5 and $10.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just a summary of potential costs for VPA. What's
Yes.
the one number that you can generally assume?
It was hard to attach a number to it. If, I could come back to you with a good number, because the variable of doing those cases for the music, for the musical instruments, and then stickers, both of those items I don't think are crazy expensive.
Right.
But I hate to just give a number. I would guess around $10,000. I would,
Okay.
or less.
Yeah,
It
that's-
probably would be less than
Yeah.
that, but
Okay.
that's just to be safe.
That's fair enough.
Unless we found some kind of item that we didn't anticipate as we dug deeper.
I understand. Anybody have any questions about visual and performing arts and the costs associated therewith? Okay. We appreciate you, Ms. Newton. Thank you. I guess next we'll have Coach Priest come up and we'll go over our athletic costs.
Well, good evening.
Evening.
I think as we did this a couple of years ago, I will say I think we're probably in a lot better shape than what we were at that time. I kind of look at Lee football. I think those coaches have, on all their uniforms that they've ordered, have all used Red Raiders. A lot of actually I went back and looked. I got with Coach Pitts, and I think the only thing that they have, there's a freshman uniform that has Lee, but I think that's the only one that they have. There's a couple of some practice gear. Track has some stuff, and maybe some sweats. But it's going to be, but I will say the majority of our varsity teams have done a good job. Where it comes a little bit as I've mentioned, it's going to be more of our sub-varsities and our 9th grade team. The JV teams is kind of when stuff gets started pushed down that Lee was used. That's going to still be the same case at John Tyler. I really didn't factor, John Tyler had continued to use a lot of John Tyler, but I do think that our varsity has done a good job, and it's going to affect more of the sub-varsity teams than it will our varsity teams. And I'll say, I think we'll make it work. If this is a decision that we have, we'll do our best to be able to make this thing work and pull it off. And, I think there is going to be some costs associated with, but I think we can do our very best to try to keep those down. Traditionally, all of our uniforms, your home uniform usually has the mascot name on it. Your away uniform, usually has the school name. So we'll just have to make do with that, and we'll contact our opponents. We may have to go with our, the home uniform, home and away, for a little bit just to be able to make this work. So really that's it. I mean, I really do. I try to put some cost in it. I went through kind of each one. I will say that, for football, your volleyball teams, all the sports that are up right now, we'll have to find ways to do it, get stock uniforms, get stuff off the shelf to be able to do it because you've passed the deadline. We're probably past the deal on basketball too as far as ordering, but our spring sports, we have some time. We'll make it work. We will. We'll do our very best to try to pull this off. And, there are going to be some things that sneak up on us that we did not think about. I will say that, and I talked to Dr. Crawford about that. And, but I think from soccer, that's going to be one that, the girls soccer team at Lee has pretty much used Tyler Lee, and that's from varsity all the way down. And so that's one that we're going to have to make some changes. I think we'll be able to, as long as there's sublimated uniforms, we've looked into that. We'll be able to put some vinyl over the top of those. I think we can do that. But also we want to make sure they look good. I think we put a team out there. We want to make sure our teams, look their very best. And so as long as that's acceptable, I think, we can do that. Swim jackets, I know, Reverend Hager, I know you're familiar with those. And, those have Tyler Lee on them. And, we can put patches on those. I think it costs us about $14 to get a patch. And that doesn't include, putting the patch on, so there will be some costs there. Soccer has their cold weather gear that has their jackets, and they all say Tyler Lee, and we would have to do that. Put a patch on that. Same things at John Tyler. We have several things that I think we can do to keep those costs down. But that's where we are.
One that's kind of hybrid between athletics and VPA that are more booster funded or self-funded. Stay there, Greg. You're not done yet. Dan or Dr. C, did any word on your cheer or Southern Bells uniforms, things like that?
Yes, we were able to head off the new cheer uniforms for this year. In the past, they've had REL and Lee on them. We had the Red Raider mascot or Red Raiders or Red Raider cheer on all the things ordered for this year, so we're good to go. We do have the small TL on a couple of items, but that's it. There is no REL or Lee on any of those. And the Southern Bells, everything also ordered for this year, do not have the REL or Lee. They have the Southern Bells on that as well.
Booster speaking, Greg and I, Coach Priest, real formal board meetings, right? Coach Priest and I have had conversations. Think if you got a well-funded booster club, let's say baseball, over time, you may wind up accruing some jerseys that are purchased through booster club funds, not district budgeted. So that might be something that's not like included in the actual rotation. Now it does extend your other jerseys because you're not wearing them all the time because they're not going to get as much worn. But let's just say there's a new style out there and a booster club says, hey, we want our kids in the new style that matches the new Rangers uniform or something. I don't know too many coaches that are going to say, no, I don't want that. So they're going to accrue that. So my guidance to Greg or Coach Priest has been, again, it goes back to what we talked about in 2018. Is it an item for item thing? Is that the guidance that you give to us, or I think I know the answer to that is do your best to be fiscally conservative and economical as you go through this. But we don't have to do a match, a jersey for jersey match on all these different products. I mean, you don't need a graphite and a white and a red and a black and your pink jersey when it's cancer awareness, all those types of things that get accrued over time. Highlighter color, that's right. Those things can be done in a very economical way to where we don't have to go replace them right there. And then you also do have the boosters. They can go raise some dollars privately to help supplement some of the things that we do have.
Okay, thanks, Coach Priest. Does anybody have any questions?
I was just trying to understand the handout that we have.
Yes, sir.
That's replacing, that has replacing patching, and some of the figures are the same. So,
well, yes, sir. Because several of them, there's only a few things that we could patch or cover up. So a lot of them are going to stay the same. I mean, I look at like, you take. I've got to put my glasses on. I cannot see anymore. You take tennis. Tennis pretty much orders uniforms, shirts. They're going to wear shirts they're going to order shirts every year, but they're going to have some things in there. They're going to have some sweats, some pullovers that it's going to be the same cost. So there's very few things. The only things that we could patch is if a uniform was sublimated, and that's actually in the material where you could actually try to put some vinyl over it. And so it's really the difference in doing a patch. So you take girls soccer, they're going to have to get uniforms. Well, we could do vinyl over some of those because a lot of those are sublimated. So we could do that, and that's patching the jacket. Or those jackets are about $150 a piece. So if we had to go get new jackets, if we said no, we do not want to put patches on them, it's not going to look good. So those are some of the differences in those. But the majority of them are going to be the same. So it's really only includes the jackets and things like that we can put a patch on.
So I brought up boosters before. There's another question, and like PTA stuff, and I guess is another thing that I'm kind of thinking about. I guess, have we given any guidance on that for right now? I mean, I hope that this board and the public realizes that the administration has kind of been in a holding pattern on this thing, and trying to figure out the lay of the land.
Our school PTA fiscal year ended end of June. They ordered no additional items after that, with an understanding that we're waiting for guidance to see where we're going forward. So we don't have any existing inventory or anything that they're looking to sell at the beginning of the year. Normally they've already ordered all of those items, but we met in early June, talked about that we need to hold on this right now, or middle of June, that we need to hold on this right now and wait and see what happens before we make any orders. And that's for the COVID situation in regard to this as well. So anything they can do for this coming year is going to be a situation they can place orders specifically, parents, students, community members, but we don't have a large inventory. We've also, all the sports programs, groups, fine arts programs that have boosters have done the same thing as well, just holding, so that we don't have a large amount of inventory if there is a change in kind of stuff we want to do with that. So we're in a good situation on boosters and parents.
Mr. Lane, I know you're already swimming with your first high school assignment. Any comments you'd like to make in regard to any things that you've heard in regard to that? I know you've got other things that you've been trying to put in place than worrying about whether or not the PTA has ordered a shirt or two. What do you think on this?
I'm not aware of any booster club in this town. I do have some concerns about what kids would be allowed to wear. We need to stop the use of a letter jacket, things that they punch the bottom on their own. I'm a systems guy, and I have put some systems in place. We had the gift of time with COVID, and so I was, as being a planner, we jumped ahead on the order of simple things like lanyards and things that say John Tyler on them. Student homework books, things like that, but probably to the tune of a couple $1,000.
He mentioned Mr. Lane mentioned letter jackets. Those currently just have a T on them, so they do not have a JT or REL on them. That's been traditional, for several years that they just had a T. I'll kind of go back on, football, pretty much football, all your fall sports order basically in January, February, to try to get those orders in. Then basketball is usually about April or May, and then your spring sports are kind of after that. They start ordering in the summer. So, that's kind of, so volleyball ordered a uniform at Lee that has Tyler Lee on it. So that's going to be a brand new jersey that comes in. It's sublimated. Hopefully we can be able to put something on that. John Tyler ordered a new football uniform and also a new volleyball uniform. They both have lines on them, so we were good there. So, as I said, I think our coaches did a pretty good job, and maybe we got lucky on some of them that they did order. We did have, there are going to be a few things that are going to pop up. So.
Question.
Yes, sir.
In regard to, I know the Booster Club PTA contributes a lot to the school, and I'm not sure
Okay,
Just two quick points of clarification. Coach Priest, thanks for your work here. On page 2, the total for replacing, which is, I'm assuming everything that is potentially problematic, is $98,500. Would you describe that number as kind of a worst-case number?
I think
Or
it's
is
going to
that-
be a conservative number. I mean, I think it's kind of my best guess. You know, I kind of went off the numbers that I had pulled before. You know, I think the other thing that is really, you know, where last time I was able to provide you with, you know, pictures of the, you know, with everything in storage, I have no idea where anything is. And that's kind of really at both high schools. So, you know, it's just kind of getting with our coaches and you know, and it's, you know, Dr. Crawford had kind of mentioned it. I mean, you know, we may have, you know, baseball may have 5 uniforms. Well, you may only have 2 now. And that's just the way it goes. You know, we're going to have to be conservative, and we're going to have to change our approach on some of our things. And, you know, practice gear, you know, maybe they've given out different things, and, you know, we're down to one thing. You know, that's, we're just going to have to figure out a way to get through this if this is the route we choose to go. And you know, coaches, you know, there's coaches that have been here, and you know, I'm sure they have a lot of apparel, but we've got a lot of new coaches, and they're going to have to get new gear this year. So all those coaches that have been here a while, they're basically a new coach, and you know, so they're not going to. We do it for everybody else, so we'll figure out a way.
But I'll say this: it's going to be if this were to happen, it's going to have to be the tolerance of what y'all want, what we can handle as we go through this. I mean, that's kind of what we talked about last time. Is this an overnight Band-Aid rip, or do we try to take care of the easier things that we can take care of and try to move into some stuff with the understanding that we're not trying to be offensive on anything if we just can't get to it? We've got to have stuff to wear. We've got to put our kids in cloth. We've got to put our coaches in cloth, that we may not be able to get around to some of these things, not just for timing, but this on back order. I mean, right now things are slow whenever you order something. So that's going to have to be something y'all need to provide some type of 35,000-foot vision on, and we'll try to execute it the best we possibly can if you get to that point.
And I look at basketball. Both programs, at Lee and at JT, they have the sub-varsities have several things that have Tyler Lee on them and John Tyler. Now, like I said, it's not both jerseys. So if we can get away with just using one jersey for a little bit, or do you go and you buy a stock reversible jersey, kind of some stuff that's similar to what we do in the middle schools, and we use it to get by with for right now. You know, those are just some decisions that we have to make, and as I said, we'll figure out the best solution for us that's going to put our, you know, and I may have to go to Under Armour and Nike, and you know, I think that will give us some grace in this thing too, and maybe we have to buy, you know, lesser quality stuff off the rack, maybe not name brand, and so those things are not going to last as long. But they will be less expensive, and we can get stuff off the rack to be able to get in there. And, you know, because I look at, and I'll touch on baseball at John Tyler. I think they have one jersey that has Lions on it, and that's on their varsity and their sub-varsity. So, you know, I think we have enough time to buy one more jersey for a home and away, and then your sub-varsity, you could get some nice dry-fit shirts, and you know, compared to spending $75 to $100 for a jersey, you know, you can get it for $35, $40. So there's some ways that we will be able to do this.
Great. I think we're comfortable. Does anybody have any more questions about the costs as far as athletics go? Are we generally comfortable with there's a lot of moving parts? And
well, again, I'm going to revert back to my conversations with my friends in another school system. This is a hard project. I don't want anyone to think that it's simple and that it's just a snap of the fingers and everything is different. So Just want to make sure we put that disclaimer out there too, this is not
an easy ask.
It's not an easy task to go through and to get down to whether I don't know how long it took. I think it took them a year again, and I'm sure they still have stuff that crop up on.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Coach Priest.
Thank you.
I think the only other one we have is the executive summary that you had provided us, or did we already cover that?
This right here, the facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Loper's going to provide.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford, and good evening, trustees.
Good evening. Before
you, you have an executive summary, and my hope is that I can make you understand this. We actually challenged our architects and our construction manager, our WRL, Corrigan Architects, Harris Craig, and to come up with very conservative ways. But I do want to back up, just like the two departments you just heard from, we're in a lot better shape than we were 2 years ago. Even though we were bid and had bid items, we were able to be sensitive to any adjustments that may need to be made at either campus through the submittal process, meaning subcontractors haven't submitted their actual product as far as what they were going to use. And I'll refer to graphics on the walls that were pre-planned, paint on the varsity gym floors that may have the lettering in it, and other areas in the school that we were able to mitigate and to use alternative methods. We kind of broke this scope up into scope and conditions, and this first page, it has a picture, and I want you to pay very close attention. This was when we were raising the panels, and if you see the vertical lines between the R and the O, or the O and the B in Robert and the front of the E, those are the panels that I'm referring to in this document as we go through here. There are a total of 6 panels that spell out the entire lettering on the portico of Robert E. Lee front right now. I'm sorry I didn't provide a picture of exactly how it is today, because it does have, of course it's finished today, and it has an ornate cornice on top of it. And where you see those red vertical posts, that's where the balusters are that are on top of the portico. So we have the engraved panels that are existing. They're in figure 1. We have cast aluminum letters on marquee sign at Shiloh Road. We have those, but they are not installed at this point, so we have already purchased those. We have cast aluminum letters that are in the interior of the main lobby, and that's in figure 3 that you see here. We have a plan view of the marquee sign on Shiloh Road also. Below that's the plan view of where the interior signage was, and the next page is a picture of how it is now, which would be that white panel between the 2 stairwells at the 2nd floor right below the railing. So these existing panels that are on the front are called GFRC, glass reinforced, fiber reinforced concrete. These panels are attached to the structural steel frame. They're about 40 foot above the paving. As y'all remember, back then we didn't have any sidewalks, we didn't have any grass, we had dirt. So we will have challenges on changing those out, but nothing that we can't do. So we anticipated if we had a new school, what it would cost to fabricate and install these new panels. And we also anticipated what if we had to remove the name prior to school. So we we looked at that approach also, and we also have timelines you'll see on into this document. So one of the most cost-effective ways to remove the lettering Robert E. Lee was to basically use a grout, or it's a similar material to the GFRC. We got with the manufacturer, and that manufacturer actually recommends a subcontractor. They've done this before, and you would basically get up there and skim float and fill the grout across there. Now, I do have to give you a disclaimer, because if we went in there, and you're going to see on into this document, and skim floated the entire high school and Robert E. Lee across there from, in the figure 1, the vertical flutes that you see on either side to give you a good stopping point. The manufacturer does not look at this as a long-term solution. So that's just something we need to think about, even though it's doable. The GFRC has been sprayed with a waterproofing, a clear waterproofing. So some of our process up there is to really have to hot power wash that off, or even maybe use some type of aggregate to make sure that we get a good clean surface. And that's one of the reasons that the manufacturer is a little tentative about warranting that process. Okay?
Flaking, falling off.
Yes, sir. Bleeding through.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So as we look at option 1 on page 4, one of the things that we could do, and looking at this in a very conservative way, you have to take off the cornice work off the top of the panels, because the panels themselves sit on the bottom cornice work, and then they interlock to the top cornice work. The good thing is we don't have to take the balusters off of the top, because they sit back far enough, and we will be able to take the flashing off and be able to unhook the cornices off of that. Now, I challenged everybody, if we in fact change the name, and if it was possible that we chose a name that would be of the same length or similar length. If you'll notice, Robert E. Lee is 3 panels, high school is 3 panels. We could leave 3 panels, the 3 panels that save high school, and save some money as far as not replacing all of them. We still have to remove the cornice and all that to take the Robert E. Lee out. So the other option that we looked at was, okay, what if we do, in fact, grout and skim coat the entire thing, and then we put raised letters on, which is a lot more cost effective. There again, the manufacturer doesn't recommend that being a long term, so they would recommend that we replace all the panels and use blank panels and then put raised letters on it. At that point, we didn't even go there because if we have to take them off and replace them, why not go back with the engraved letters? And besides, the entire rest of the campus at the dining hall, the media center, and all that, we felt like that we would be jeopardizing the integrity of the aesthetics and the classical look of the rest of the campus.
Theatre. The theater.
Theatre, yes, sir.
Theatre.
Theatre.
TRE.
Dining hall, media center, and theatre.
Okay.
So below all that is what you have. So phase 1, to infill the existing signage at Robert E. Lee, if we just did 3 panels, would be $9,000. Now, that's assuming that you want to even infill those, or if we wait till, and if the name is changed, till we build 3 new panels, and we can live with that being up there till that time. Just an option. or it's $13,000 to do all 6 panels with letters. Phase 2 would be that fabricating the new panels, as you see there, will take 12 to 16 weeks of when the new name is selected and we're approved to move forward, and 3 to 4 weeks for installation after the panels. Now you see that asterisk there. We'll probably have to put swamp mats, close the front end down, and of course have alternative entrances in there because this is very big, heavy equipment, and those panels themselves weigh about 800 pounds apiece. So we'd have to be very safe. So if we only replace 3 panels, it's $102,000, and then $130,000 if it's all 6. Is everybody still following me? Am I doing all right?
Yep.
Confusing myself.
Doing fine.
And then, of course, if we did the infill, everything, and did the infield all the way across, it's $13,000, and then you put raised letters on it, it's $12,500 for those letters and installation. And again, we'd still have to protect all the sidewalk and all that. The additional signage at Robert E. Lee is on the marquee. We have already purchased those. That $1,800 that you see has already been expended. It would be another $1,800 to replace those, though the labor, that would just be for the signage. Since we hadn't installed them, we wouldn't be charging any labor. And then the entry lobby interior signage is $900 if we want to replace it or just not put it up. Moving on to John Tyler. So John Tyler's a little bit easier, totally different architects. Fitzpatrick Butler and Stantec and WRL, we challenged them also to look at this potential impact. And they have letters at the main entry up high that say, I know they're hard to see, and that's been brought to our attention before. So we do have a plan.
Pictures of it, when you're right up on it, you can see it very well.
Yes, it's just the lighting right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have cast aluminum on the main entry. In Figure 1, cast aluminum letters on the monument sign on Loop 323. That's actually right in front of that main entry out there close to the loop. They have not been installed yet, but we have them. They're fabricated. We've bought them. And then Daktronics is the marquee out on the corner of Lyons Lane. And it has a double backlit panel at the top of the marquee on both sides. So those are the 2 areas. And then we went through the same exercise showing you the renderings of that. And then we could go ahead and remove the lettering at John Tyler. And then the difference in John Tyler, that band up there is brick. So we would then tooth out the brick and replace the ones that are damaged, and then come back and later, if we needed to get it down immediately, and then come back later whenever the name was changed, and then install the new lettering. And we give the cost for those on page 8, the final page. So the main cost at Robert E. Lee is the removal of the brick and the repair of the brick. So that's the $12,750. And then phase 2 is 6 to 8 weeks whenever from the approval of a new school name, and $8,400 for those letters to go back up there on the brick along with the move-in cost. Marquee sign, 6 to 8 weeks from approval of a new name for fabrication, 2 to 3 weeks for installation on the site, which is $7,750. And then the monument sign, replace those cast letters, is $2,500. That's $10,250 both combined. And I do believe we'll find some other things. There's already there's some ancillary facilities that we have out there that I think about Rose Stadium on the scoreboard. I believe we have John Tyler and listed all of the championships.
On the scoreboard?
Mm-hmm.
No.
We don't?
There's a block tee and a leaping lion.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
You've got I was out there today. You've got the locker rooms. On the outside it says John Tyler Lions, Robert E. Lee
Oh,
Raiders.
okay.
But the scoreboard, the video board have the block tee and the leaping lion, and the newly installed, about to be newly installed AstroTurf. Excuse me.
Yeah, we call
synthetic playing surface.
Yes,
We'll have the block tee and the leaping lion in the end zones. That are not identifiable for either school name. But block tee's been a long time symbol for Lee, and leaping lion has been a long time symbol for John Tyler. So we were able to adjust that as appropriate as we've gone forward. This was decided before we got to this point.
Yeah.
One more thing on facilities that we'll need some guidance on. I guess at either school, you've got practice fields. Do they have logos on them? Lee's got a big T with the Lone Ranger on his horse, right? John Tyler, do they have a lion in the middle? I can't remember.
I think they have the line.
Okay.
Is that? Okay.
Now, both
Yeah,
those
line.
fields are running past their lifespan too, so there'll be something for consideration later on. A couple other things. We've got bricks that have been donated by the public. It's my recommendation that if it goes to this point, that we leave those bricks in place. Removing those would certainly be a pretty large task for us in regard to trying to track that down to see if they still want the bricks in there if they weren't able to choose what they wanted in those bricks. Obviously, we do have some mechanisms in place to make sure things that are put in those bricks around the flagpoles and at the memorials are appropriate. The foundation helps us with that. We're very appreciative of that. The other things, plaques, John Tyler, I can't remember how far back it goes, but we transferred the plaques of the war dead. Back to World War I?
It's World War.
World War from Tyler
Yeah.
High.
Up to Vietnam, I believe.
That's always been there, along with a memoriam of the fire.
That's correct.
Correct?
Correct.
And those are scheduled to be put in either side of the flagpoles over there as well. They do have the name of the school on them. Our recommendation is we leave that alone. So they are what they are. Now, y'all can tell us, no, that's not what you want. But then again, that's just kind of what we've talked about as we've gone forward. That's what those concrete angled walls, for lack of a better term, right there on either side of the flagpole at JT were designed for. At
Yes,
Lee, you have each service branch has engraved on there the war dead from Lee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there anything else over there? They don't. I think it just has the shield or symbol of that branch of service.
They do, and around the flagpole, we have the Robert E. Lee name around on the marble because we're able to utilize the existing flagpole and memorial that came from what was the existing courtyard.
Are you able to go back in and engrave anything else on that? I guess you can, because you can engrave those as well.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's current too. As far as didn't we have one student in 2018?
Yes. Tragically, yes.
Yeah.
But at the base, I guess does it go around the entire
No, it's
pedestal?
It's only about this big. It just goes around the flagpole itself.
Okay. That'll be something we would need conversation about.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Loper?
The bond?
For the building of these schools, what can that money be utilized for? In general.
So I'd have to refer back to the referendum. So I believe, I don't recall exactly how it was worded. That was
Renovations and additions to both schools.
Okay. Mhm.
Just one question. If I remember correctly, when we were originally planning the front of the signage for Lee, and it was going to be cast stone, the number was $460-something thousand last time.
That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up because, like I mentioned, before submittals and post-bid addendums and VE items, value engineering, we were able to do that, which in fact affected the structure, meaning the GFRC is a lot lighter than cast stone. And that is, that's a very good point. So that's another way that we were able to save money, not only just for that, but all the way around the campus.
Right. So the 465, which 2 years ago we thought would be the cost to replace the signage, if I'm understanding your analysis here, because of that change alone, the cost is either $130,000 if we were to replace the existing panels, all 6 of them, so that would be the most, or it could be as little as $25,000 if we infilled and added the metal letters, correct?
Correct.
Roughly? Okay, thank you very much.
What is is Three Lakes? Is it?
It's GFRC.
It is GFRC
Yes,
as well? Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Lope?
Yes, sir, I've heard. I know. Well, just for your information, if we end up changing it, I think we're going to go to a different color.
Okay. So by my total for everything, this is, and there's obviously variables in there, it's $330K plus or minus.
For both schools.
For both schools, that's everything. And obviously, it's not exact. And we've established that with athletics, there are multiple variables, and it's hard to get a number on, but we do appreciate y'all's efforts, and that does help clarify some of the costs associated with those potential adjustments to the names. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Mr. Loper or anybody else regarding costs?
I would like to make a comment on the project in general. I think that an excellent job on most of those projects. And I have to say that my understanding is that they will save money on each one of the projects that we loaded. So I think that you're doing an excellent job in that regard.
Thank you very much. I have a great team.
And I think everybody here would definitely be interested in the most cost-effective way to go through this process, and we can look at those ways if it's decided, as we move forward. But thank you for y'all's reports on that. Okay. The other parts of our agenda item are discussion about this topic. And I'll go ahead and open up the floor to anybody who might have anything to say regarding this specific topic. You guys can jump in there whenever you want.
I'm not scared. I can be brief. So almost 3 years ago, I sat here and I said 3 things: that we needed to move to a vote and act swiftly and deliberately, that the process needed to be board-driven because it's our responsibility, and that we needed to address policy changes. I also said that we had an opportunity to be leaders and be an example of how to work positively through these issues. It wasn't my idea then, and it's a decades-old issue. I was listening to my community, and I was listening to students who were asking for change. Unfortunately, last time this board did not lead, and so I'm grateful this time to be able to have another conversation about it and the opportunity to take it up again. Thankfully, that lack of action then, though, has created and empowered some student leaders outside who have showed up meeting after meeting in 2018 and continue to show up in the midst of a pandemic. Students who've learned a lot about community organizing and their role in our political process. And I have always said that our success should be measured by civic responsibility and participation of our students. And if that were to be true, then this meeting and these student leaders are serving as our final exam. We should keep in mind, though, that we're talking about changing names, and we aren't talking yet about next steps, like being creative and finding ways to correct inequalities and disparities that still exist in our schools. Student achievement shouldn't be determined by zip code, and until that's no longer true, we still have more work to do. The road that we have ahead of us is long, but I'm committed to making positive change when we see injustice and inequality, and we need to remove the walls that divide us. And tonight's vote, hopeful vote, is critical to set in motion our community's healing. Changing the names was right 50 years ago, it was right 2 years ago, and it's right still today. I'm still in favor of us voting, of us driving the naming process, and of us adopting necessary policy changes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martinez.
I also would like to have a comment. We've heard what everyone has said and everyone's feelings, especially in our districts. The threats of we're going to fire you, the taxing thing, and I've been black all my life. And so if you have not had that experience of being talked about, I'm a child of segregation and integration. I've been at Tyler ISD all of my life as a teacher. I've worked at a school where I've been the only African American for 10 years. And so it is a change is needed. And if you have never been a recipient of hate, if you've never been a recipient of going for a job interview and you know you're qualified, you know your job, I know that I was and still am a good teacher, and to be criticized or to be evaluated because of the color of your skin, not because of what I am capable of doing. If you don't know those things, if you haven't experienced it, you can't tell me about it. So it's an experience that I've experienced myself. And so this is a new generation. I don't like the fact that people are saying that outsiders are coming in. The African American community in Tyler has a mind of their own. We don't need outsiders to come in to tell us what to do when what's to do is right. I represent the people in my area, and I'm going to represent them well. And it's a tough conversation, but it's a conversation that has to have. We've had the Bible thrown at us, but the Bible also says there's a time and season for everything, and this is that time and season.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins.
Okay, I would like to have a prepared statement, and it's not nearly as long as it was the last time. As many of you know, my personal pictures have been accessed, mocked, and at times altered in order to cast a false light on me and my family. These comments are both hurtful and hateful. In Ephesians 4:29, Paul tells his followers to let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. Our board president has asked all to remain poised and reasonable during this time of discussion and conversation. We all have listened, and in fairness, I would like to ask that my voice and my history be heard. As a history teacher, I love learning about the past. And out of that passion for history, around 3 decades ago, my husband and I participated in historical reenacting. It's a hobby, an educational and entertainment activity in which we honor the soldier. And in the Civil War, we honor both Federal and Confederate soldiers. After research of the original events, battles are reenacted as closely to the historical scenario as possible. It is a pastime that is enjoyed by both the actors and the audience. Over those years, we traveled to battlefield sites, taking part as soldier and civilian from either the North or the South, as the event required in order to present as close to an authentic impression as possible. The wedding happened during one of these reenactments, and both sides were represented. I have ancestors who fought for the Union, as well as some who fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War. As the daughter of a former prisoner of war and the wife of a retired decorated combat veteran, I honor the soldier, those who would lay down their life in service to their country. As an educator, I encourage you to not take everything you read on social media as fact. In this day and time, there's a lot of misinformation floating around. Even so-called unbiased reporters tweet their opinions on situations, events, and history. Instead, I encourage you to not jump to conclusions. Do your own impartial research into historical events and seek true knowledge. There's no such thing as a right side of history. We're all a part of the same history, and together we need to learn and grow from it. We need not to run from our history, but teach it in a way that helps us understand who we are today so that we can work together for a better tomorrow. As a board member, I want you to know that I hear you, all of you, and the wide range of opinions on the matter before us. Changing the name of the school alone will not change the hearts of people. I believe there's a much bigger conversation to be had on race relations in our schools, our churches, our homes, our communities, and our nation. The members of this board are elected to guide and direct in the best interest of the district as a whole and its students. Our job is to focus on successful student outcomes for all students, and that is where our focus needs to return. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Trish. Anybody else?
To my fellow trustees, before I begin, I want to thank you for your commitment to the children of Tyler. You serve as volunteers because you love this community and care about its future, not because of any national political agenda, but because it's the way that you choose to show that you love your neighbors. You listen to our community well, and you take the role of steward of Tyler ISD seriously. So for your sake, I will try to be brief tonight, which for a preacher is hard. To those watching online or listening outside, welcome back. It's been 2 years since this board addressed the issue of names of our schools. Since that time, we've raised our overall accountability rating to an 85, set new records for college and career readiness, made progress on the achievement gap, outscored our local private schools on most of our AP tests. We lowered the tax rate, and we're building 2 new beautiful schools on time and within budget. And in the span of a couple of weeks last year, we quickly pivoted to teach and care for students in the middle of a global pandemic. We've been busy. When this issue was brought to us again, I went back and read everything I said in our previous meetings, and I believe today what I believed then. Happy to share those offline with anyone who is new to this debate, who's forgotten my position, or is curious as to how I came to that position. But quickly, that means I still believe that schools are different than statues and street names because we compel a student to attend a school based on where they live, and we ask them to identify with the school, literally wearing the name of the school on their uniforms. And they take that name with them in their memories, on their yearbooks, on their diplomas. So I understand why people care about the name of the school. I still believe that the name Robert E. Lee, what he symbolized, what he meant, changed over the years, and today is associated, whether we like it or not, with beliefs that are antithetical to our values and send the wrong message to all of our students, but especially our students of color. I believe that all of us are made in the image of God and therefore have infinite and equal worth, dignity, and value, and symbols that say otherwise have no place in our schools. And at the same time, changing the name of a school is mostly a symbolic act. It doesn't immediately improve test scores. It doesn't erase our complex history. It doesn't eliminate racism. It doesn't end strife in our community, but it is a start. And I believe it will have a positive impact on the culture of the school. Unlike any of my fellow trustees, I've faced a contested election where this was the central issue of the campaign, and was fortunate to win the support of the voters of District 6. And just as my thoughts about the name have not changed, neither has my campaign position, which was, while I supported a change 2 years ago, I would not raise the issue again because I believe the economic window to change had closed, and that the reported $1.5 million cost of conversion that was reported back then was too high. I've kept my pledge not to raise this issue. But since then, 3 things have changed. First, we've learned that what looked like cast stone on the front of the building is actually a composite material that can be changed at a fraction of the originally forecast cost, about $25,000, not $460,000. Second, the school's been rebranded, which radically reduced the number of uniforms and other equipment that would be replaced from about $1 million down to as little as $100,000. This reduces the cost of conversion for a single school from as much as $1.5 million down to as little as $125,000 or lower. It's about a 92% reduction from the prior estimate. Furthermore, I've been talking with a group of individuals in the community who've committed to work to raise funds to pay for all or most of the conversion costs if the board does approve a change, limiting or eliminating the use of taxpayer funds. Therefore, I do not believe that the cost of change should be an obstacle to progress. Finally, one of our speakers mentioned it, recent incidents amongst the student body at Lee have led me to believe that there's a greater risk of disruption of learning because of this issue than there was 2 years ago, and even a concern about the safety of some of our students that is much greater than we previously faced. Which brings us to tonight. The specific proposal we're discussing tonight is to change the name of both of our comprehensive schools. I've previously argued that one name was currently associated with white supremacy, although both historical figures were slave owners and Confederate leaders. In my conversations 2 years ago, the only people advocating to change the name of John Tyler High School were folks who really didn't want to change the name of either school. But that is not the case now. Spoken with many community leaders and alumni from both schools who feel that both schools should be changed. This is a move supported by many of the largest employers in our community, as well as over 34 pastors who signed a letter of support, and many more who've expressed their support privately. So while I don't believe both names are equally problematic, because I do desire to work towards consensus on this issue, and because the costs are minimal or covered by donations, I support changing both names. Therefore, as a graduate of Robert E. Lee High School, the school both my siblings and 3 of my kids graduated from, and as a 4th cousin of Robert E. Lee himself, I believe this is a better path. As a graduate of West Point who understands the complicated history of the man, I believe this is a better path. As a combat veteran who loves our country and our community and is not afraid of or swayed by political pressure or outright threats, I believe that the time is now to start us down a better path, one that aligns the symbols we revere and honor with the values that we hold. A better path that has the potential to inspire and encourage all of our students and that is consistent with our belief that every student can be successful. I look forward to walking down this better path with members of this board and the administration, as well as many of the great people in our community who care deeply about its future and will continue to work to provide the best possible education for the children that we treasure.
Thank you, Reverend Hager. I think that leaves Artis and Andy and me.
Okay, Artis, thank you. First off, I do want to thank all of the people who have called, texted, emailed, written letters. People are still writing letters, some are. And that stopped me on the street. I appreciate your passion on both sides. A representative government is one of the great things about this country. In September of 2017, in a public board meeting, I asked the question, in a situation of compulsory education in which by law you must attend the high school you are zoned to regardless of race, is it right to force African American students to attend a school named after the most famous and honored Confederate figure from a war whose underlying cause, either directly or indirectly, was to protect the institution of slavery? I hope then that leadership from both the white and the black community could sit down and listen to each other's thoughts on the issue and come to a resolution about the name of our high schools. That never happened in that process, and in my words from 2018, it seemed more tied to a liberal progressive movement than a genuine community discussion about a name. Because of this, I felt like a change would do more harm for the district than it would benefit. As I said then, there is a time for everything, and in my opinion, that wasn't the time. Now, I have a lot of wonderful memories of Lee, as do thousands of others, and thousands do at John Tyler as well. It is these times and memories that are the hardest to let go of. Not the name of the man. As I said before, if there is a way to preserve the legacy of the graduates of Robert E. Lee and John Tyler through this process, I think most reasonable people would go along with it. I pulled out my old senior yearbook this morning and was reminded that 2 of our 3 class favorites in 1988 were African American. Remind you, the population of our school at that time was 80 to 85% white. We had a wonderful student body that loved each other regardless of color. In fact, our homecoming king and Mr. Robert E. Lee, Corey Mayfield, was African American. So when I hear our school get attacked as a racist school from the beginning of the history of time, it bothers me, because that wasn't what I experienced. It was important to me then, and it is important now, that this be a Tyler decision, that the majority of us from all races can at least try to listen to each other and come up with something we can live with. Tyler is a great town. It has a long history of people caring for their neighbors as much as they do themselves. Tylerites are generous with their time and resources and always have been. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I do want to thank most of you involved in this process this time around for letting us and the community work through it without turning it into a political circus. I understand the passion on both sides, especially in the climate we are in. I do want to, however, remind those of you who seem surprised or particularly outraged that this item has appeared on the agenda again, that it only takes one member to put an item on an agenda, and all 5 of us that have been on the board as senior members are statements about how we stood on this issue. We've all gone through an election since that first came up. So I guess in a way what I'm saying is that if you go by that alone, many would say that whatever tonight's vote is a representative will of the community. If you don't think it is, then I would suggest you get involved. The three most common arguments I hear for keeping the names are some version of history repeating itself because we're going to forget history. Number two, they've made it this long with the way it is. Why is it such a big deal now? Or number three, you are giving in to a radical, progressive cultural revolution. Real quickly, as to the first item, I really don't understand it. I looked to see who made it up, and it's not a Bible verse or anything. It's just, I don't think we're going to be enslaving people or having a civil war just because we change the name of these schools. I don't get that. I don't understand that. Maybe some of you do, but it doesn't resonate with me. The second thing is, the problem I have with the second one is that if we are all created equal, when I put myself in their shoes, it doesn't feel right. As I stated in 2017, yes, there are bigger issues that are having a much more drastic effect on young people than the names of our schools, but that's not what's on our agenda tonight. Just because people have lived with something the way it is doesn't mean it's right. As to the third item, I absolutely agree that the biggest threat to our school district, state, and country is the current radical progressive movement that is sweeping America. It is here in Tyler, and people need to wake up. I would call my generation the comfortable generation. Most of our hardship has been limited or self-imposed. If you are a conservative, you better wake up before your country is unrecognizable. Having said that, it's my job to examine each issue that comes before the board separately, and to me, this one doesn't check most of the boxes of the cancel culture campaign. First, we've been dealing with issues related to our ties to the Confederacy for over 50 years. Most, if not all, of the citizens I have talked to recently, when asked if they are willing to come in front of the school board to defend this tie, politely decline. The majority of people I have talked to say the Civil War is over and it's time to move on. While there are a good many woke white people involved in wanting this name changed, there is a general consensus among the mature leaders of this community, both white and black, that are not part of the progressive movement, that believe having our only two high schools prominently linked to the Confederacy and its ties to slavery needs to come to an end. Which brings me back to my initial question. Is it right to force African American students to attend a school named after the most prominent Confederate general who fought a war to protect slavery? And secondly, why did they change the name of Tyler High to John Tyler in the 1950s? Was it because of his ties to the Confederate Congress? A former school board left a mess on our hands. We can all agree to that. And as I sit here tonight, I'm not willing to kick the can down the road to the next school board. It's not a political movement, it's what's in my heart. If the majority of this board is ready to adjust the names of our high schools, then it's probably time. In doing so, please be considerate of the incredible legacies that people at John Tyler and Robert E. Lee have left us. They had nothing to do with slavery, and let's work hard to preserve the great things about Lee and JT as we look toward the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergfeld. Artis?
Did I turn on my mic? It hadn't been on all night. I didn't
It's
realize.
on now, I noticed.
Thank
it.
you.
Yes,
You
yes,
could have told
sir.
me earlier.
Well, I wasn't going to call you out, you know.
Anyway, my statement is not near as long. I haven't been here as long as y'all have. So, and I did prepare a statement in the aspect that I would not talk too long and say some things that I may regret later on. So, my statement is, I'm voting for the name change because I believe it's the best thing for the students that attend the schools. If the students' education is hindered because of the name of the school, we should be concerned. Our district is approximately 75% minority. So if the names are an issue with our students, we need to address it. I think that it was poor choice in naming the schools initially. In the 1960s, when the educational institutions were going through major changes neutral names should have been selected. Yet, TISD chose to move from a neutral name of Tyler High to John Tyler. The name Robbie Lee was left in place. Why? Were there ulterior motives or just tunnel vision? We cannot allow political agendas to direct our decision-making process in education. Yet, it influences our decisions. It should not direct it. The students within TISD district are our primary concern and should always be. The image of the county and city should not direct what or how we operate within the district. If we make good decisions for TISD, that will always make the county and city image appear better to others. Unfortunately, TISD has not always done that. Thank you for your time and interest, and in so doing, I would like to make a motion. You want to make
We
your
will get to
statement?
that motion.
Okay, you're going to make a
I
statement?
do want to say
Okay.
a couple things. First of all, I enjoy working with the board. This this position is one that you don't get paid, and obviously, and sometimes you do get paid by hard pats on the back or attaboys. But over the last 3 or 4 years, this issue has been debated in the community and at our meetings, over dinner tables, out over drinks, out on the patio. I remember personally asking for time to ponder so emotions wouldn't cloud our thoughts. I asked for this issue to be discussed outside of school months so we could focus on successful student outcomes. I've even offered a compromise to end this debate without full-scale change, just in hopes of bringing unity in a time where it was nowhere in sight. As a board, we've all cycled through elections, as y'all mentioned, where the public could have made a change should the majority in their districts have been displeased with where we all stood on this issue. I believe this evening enough time has passed for us to see through the fog of emotion, since we've been dealing with it for 3 or 4 years now. And we're discussing this at the right time of year. When this issue came back up, I knew I was going to have to lead in a way that I had not been forced to do in the past. I knew support would need to be garnered by leaders in all areas of our community, and we would have to be sensible and objective in our thoughts and actions. I knew that where the majority of the board stood, and that we needed to go ahead and address this issue before the school year began, as we have so many more issues to deal with. So tonight, after many conversations with those whom I respect and I admire, my eyes are very clear on this. It's time to rip the Band-Aid off, as this board has done with so many other things in the last 7 years, things that were holding us back as a district, things that served as future pitfalls and obstacles that needed to be dealt with swiftly, things that could divide a board or drive away a top-notch superintendent, and I believe we have one. Marty, thanks for bearing with us through this. I know it's not easy, and I know a lot's been asked of y'all, and that's not written down. Many citizens have reached out about a district-wide election concerning this issue, and I want to reiterate, we do not have the legal authority to call on an election on this. And even if we did, I don't believe we'd have the votes to call it. Many citizens have had concerns about us caving to the people who want a Marxist revolution. And I can tell you, I want no part of Marxism. And in fact, when this Marxist revolution is quelled and things get back to normal, I'll still have 2 high schools named 80 plus years after the Civil War and named after guys that didn't serve locally and had prominent positions in the Confederacy. That's not going away. The fact of the matter is, as Andy said, our forefathers put us in a bind. They made a bad call, and we're having to deal with it 60 plus years after that. This is not something that future boards need to deal with. So I'm willing, even as a proud REL graduate, to remove this obstacle for the sake of them, for the sake of our city, and for the sake of our children who shouldn't have to deal with this now or in the future. I also want to say that it's okay to be a conservative and have a little bit of compassion. And it's okay to be a Republican and display the ability to reason and to be rational. We need to be able to separate and address our local issues from those taking place nationally. So don't allow the news we consume to overcome our critical thinking skills. We must realize that this local issue will continue to impair our ability to educate kids and come together in unity, most of all. I realize it's hard not to allow issues to become political and divisive, but we must be able to understand and reason even in the most heated of times. I'm also all for ending this here. There are some guys that lived in a time much more trying than this. They fought in a war that tore our nation apart and ultimately came back home and rebuilt, serving in prominent roles in the community and the state of Texas. And I believe that local service after that should be commended. And there's danger, as one of our speakers put it, in applying modern standards to times we didn't live in. Extremism will ultimately consume and ruin this country and community if we're not careful. So many of my Christian brothers and sisters are focused so much on race that they're having a hard time showing grace. And grace must be liberally given if peace is to be achieved. And I believe it's time for a lot of people on both sides of this issue to lay down your swords. If you're a proud REL or John Tyler grad listening to this tonight, it's okay to have a bit of sorrow in your heart about this. I get it. Nobody wants to have a place that so many memories were made to be taken away. But those memories will always be there. The dances, the teachers, the parties, the friends, and for some, championships. And that pride stems from your accomplishments and accolades you received while you were there. I'll always be a proud graduate of the class of '99 for Robert E. Lee, full of leaders and people of all walks of life, good friends. It's not the school name I'm proud of, it's the people and the memories associated therewith. And it's not our fault those schools received those names, but I believe it's our obligation to address them tonight. The term legacy has been used during many comments over the last few years, and I can't help but imagine new schools with new legacies. And lastly, I realize that this truly has a minimal impact on student outcomes. Where we're at right now as a society is concerning to me, but by handling this issue, it gives us one less distraction to deal with so we can teach individual accountability and owning your actions and taking constructive criticism without folding, along with the numerous other issues that truly do impact our ability to educate kids. So let's act now on this so we can get back to focusing to successful student outcomes. With that being said, I will open the floor up for a motion on adjusting the names of Robert E. Lee High School and John Tyler High School.
Sorry. Mr. Chair, I move that we change the names of John Tyler and Robert E. Lee High Schools, and including the associated cost. Anything?
Okay. Motion has been made to change the names of Robert E. Lee and John Tyler High School.
I'll second.
Mr. Martinez, you have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And we will now discuss a possible process to identify and choose the names. We do have a policy on this that we have submitted, and we're going to go over as a first reading. Marty, do you want to unpack that policy or highlight some of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's in your packet. It was also released, obviously, with the day of the agenda as a first reading. For those of y'all that don't know, that are out there watching or listening in public, it's the process of this school board. It's not state law, but it's the process of this school board has been for the last 15 plus years to have a first reading of policy as presented to the board. The board reviews that policy. Any adjustments or concerns are then relayed to the administration to write those down. And then when we get to the next board meeting, which is actually on Monday night, that policy is considered as a second reading and acted upon by the board. Any changes or notations made before they actually vote on it. So tonight we have a revision to policy CW local. Worked on this a week or so ago when we knew we were going to have a special called meeting. Much appreciation to John M. Hardy. Sorry, Mast got me, John. Wasn't expecting that when I turned around. Along with Mr. Washman, the board president. So I'm just going to go through the changes that we made and the additions that we made, and y'all can have a conversation about that if so desired. The first part of it is in naming, renaming, or modifying the name of any school building or other facility in the district, the following guidelines shall be used. We struck through the first two items on the existing CW local. Struck through a facility may be named after a person who has served the district or the community. 2, a facility may be named after any local, state, or national heroic figure. The thoughts behind that administratively, and of course it takes a board vote to approve this, but the administrative recommendation on this is to not name schools after people. We're all imperfect. I'm not going to participate in any speeches or anything. Y'all gave fabulous comments, all 7 of you. But certainly this is something that's been pretty divisive and something that's been very concerning for y'all. It's taken up a lot of your time. It's taken a lot of the school system and the administration's time as we go forward. Hopefully, that those two things stricken from the policy could potentially allow for some relief on that. New to this policy is a school facility may be named after any patriotic belief, principled ideals, values, desired qualities, or aspired outcomes for district students or the community. Number 4 remains, with a small adjustment, a facility may be named after any local, state, or national geographic area, landmark, or physical attribute. We did leave room of a new portion of the policy in number 5 that if we do want to, if the board and the community do want to recognize individuals in the community, that portions of school facilities would be available for that through a process. A portion of a school facility may be named after a person who has served the district or community directly. Such portions of school facilities may include, but not limited to, theaters, gymnasiums, fields, libraries, halls, or corridors, or other sub-areas of a school facility. Think Earl Campbell Field at Christus Trinity Mother Frances Rose Stadium. Think about the hallways that are named after the individual leaders here at the Career Technology Center. I think Mr. Bergfeld, I think that was your motion when I went back and looked at when we did that. Think of our gymnasiums, Al Harris. Think of our theater and Martin L. Edwards, John Tyler that we're going to open up here pretty soon. Think of Bill and Ann Coleman Gymnasium at Three Lakes Middle School. There's certainly room in there to honor individuals as we go forward. Number 6, this remains and is pretty obvious. The board must approve the naming of all facilities. We didn't adjust it, but we've caught this. Next time you see this facility, we may add this paragraph here to number 5. It's kind of separate there. It's kind of, it's not confusing. It just needs to probably be tied to that. That a person whose name is considered for a portion of a school facility must have made a significant local contribution to society, education, and the name should lend prestige and status to an institution of learning. I know y'all can all read, but since this is public, I want to go ahead and read all of these if that is okay with y'all. Nominations. This is pretty much the process that's out there in other school systems. It's also the process that we have used whenever we have accepted recommendations from a community member to submit something to the school district. In naming school buildings and educational facilities, administration, on behalf of the board, will accept local community, student, and staff input or suggestions to collect viable names for considerations. Input and suggestions shall be made in writing on a form provided by the district within the designated timeframes established by the district, and will only be accepted for the school facility or portion of a school facility for which names are being solicited by the board. After your vote, the names being solicited by the board at this time are the renaming and the adjustments of the names of our 2 high schools, comprehensive high schools. Recommendation process. The superintendent or designee may appoint a selection committee to review all input and suggestions and to ensure that any names presented for board consideration meet the established criteria. The established criteria will be the policy that you adopt. Board decision. The superintendent shall submit to the board in a timely manner no more than 3 recommended names for each school or facility to be named. A list of all submitted input or suggestions will be provided to the board. The responsibility for the final decision in naming a school or facility rests with this board. And on the very back is another reinforcement of that the board shall take action concerning a school facility name at an open public meeting. That is the recommended policy adjustment for CW local.
Okay, and it's a first reading, so we're not adopting this policy tonight. Adjustments can be made to it if we see fit, and the goal would be to go ahead and adopt it Monday night if we, with or without adjustments that we might make. Does anybody have any comments regarding this?
I've got a few, just since I probably won't be here Monday. I better make them now.
You might explain why you're not going to be here Monday.
Yeah, family vacation, planned months and months ago before all this. One thing I want to make sure that we are cautious of. We've been dealing with this for years, this whole naming stuff. So we're a little name weary, I would say. I don't want to see any revenge naming, is my best way to say it. We need to be done with playing games with the names of our schools. So I hope that if there's anybody out there who thinks this is our time to get back at so-and-so or to do this or to play, none of it. I hope this board will understand that we're not doing that. We don't need the drama right now over the naming of these schools. And I think that we need to be cautious on how many people we involve in the process right now, given the climate in our town, in our state, in our country, and all that's going on. We were elected to do this job. We can do it. The people who named our high schools before, I believe, had student committees or something involved, and that recommendations they got are what we've had to live with. So I think we can handle this as a board. I trust all of y'all that we can do this without this being turning into something that we maybe didn't foresee. So those are my general comments. And if y'all have anything, please let me know before Monday.
Okay. Anybody else?
I agree with what you said, Mr. Bergfeld. I think that's wise. I support these changes. I think they do put us in a place to get naming ultimately off the agenda for us. And the one thing that I don't know if it rises to the level of a policy, and so I'll just state it as my personal belief. I would be open to limiting changes for schools during times of remodeling. I'm really not interested in a radical renaming process for multiple schools. I think we have dealt with the 2 schools that have the kind of the most complex history when it comes to their name. And so I don't know whether that rises to something that could be included in the policy or should be included in the policy, but my personal opinion is we don't need to go now and change a whole bunch of other names. And if we wanted to put that in policy, I'd be happy to support that, limiting it to when we do a remodel. Or if others don't think that rises to the level of policy, I can support that too. My personal position is I think we're done at 2 for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Thank you, Fritz. Anybody else?
Yes. First question is number 3. I was trying to figure out, it says a school facility may be named after any patriotic belief, principle, idea, values, desires. I was trying to come up with what's that referring to. I'm not sure what that means.
I would just throw out there, something like, liberty.
Okay.
Something.
Okay. Justice. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, liberty and justice.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I got it now.
Another synonym would be virtue.
I didn't hear you.
Virtue.
Okay.
I think that's another way of saying principled ideals or values is virtue.
Okay. The only comment, I agree with the policy change. I was just concerned about the recommendation process, and I think that as a representative of my community, I think that it's important that I allow individuals that may want to have an opportunity to make that choice in helping to name the schools. So I would like to see maybe each one of us representing a various district, maybe select someone from our districts to serve on the committee, working with our PR person to facilitate this process. And I think that's because I feel like I'm obligated to involve my community to a certain extent. I listen to them and I make decisions based on the input they give me. And this has been a very controversial issue. I could very well help make that decision, but I prefer to have someone from my district to assist in that process. So that's just my opinion in regards to that process.
Okay.
I'd probably need some coaching on how to make that work. Again, we'll do whatever you need us to do, but if we're going to have a collection like we've done in the past of submissions from the community, that's going to be captured in off of Eduphoria, what are we calling it? I mean, it's not a survey, but that's how we collect it.
Okay.
So I would need some coaching on how to make that work if we were going to have people making a decision on that when the community is actually submitting names.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, my suggestion is that they would collect those names. They would be the committee that look at those names, and they would come up with the 3 recommended names.
Sure.
As simple as that. It's not,
Okay. So they could we still have community input on this, not just
Right.
the 7 individuals that are on this group. Okay.
Right.
I think in policy that, where it says a superintendent or designee may
Right.
appoint a selection committee, I think that's lumped in there. If we chose to guide you in that manner, I think we're still covered in policy, unless somebody disagrees. I think we could
do that.
I think we can work within
Right.
this wording to allow for that, if we so choose.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else? I mean, it's just first reading, so,
Right.
I mean, it looks to me, I agree with no names after people. It's
Just one process question for clarity. So after the second reading,
Yes.
we can then vote in that current meeting. So, or do we need to wait for the following meeting? I can't remember.
No, I think second reading, we
Second
can
reading,
vote
then
it
we can vote.
in. And I'm in favor of, now, I don't know, we're getting a little ahead, but I'm in favor of a pretty quick process to get this show on the road. And so Marty and his staff, in dealing with COVID-19 issues and all the other things they're having to deal with, don't have to be pulled away
I know that's right.
to deal with people vying for, what name they want. So I'm open to, and maybe on Monday we can, or after, we can set a time period for those suggestions. And then by the time, sometime in August when we meet, we can have a list of names by then. I mean,
How about Monday? I'll bring y'all a recommended timeline.
that's
And
perfect.
y'all can
Thank you.
say yes or no on that.
Because your staff is going to be the one that's having to wrangle a lot of these, and I
Yeah.
know that they're busy otherwise. I am proud of this board. I love all of you. Trish, y'all publicly listening. Trish Nation is one of the kindest, most Christian ladies I've known. And anybody who says otherwise doesn't know your heart. And I just feel like I need to say that. Appreciate you serving and working with you, as I do everybody else.
Thank you, Wade.
Okay, well, that has been a meeting for the ages. I will go ahead and entertain.
I usually do that part,
Yeah.
so I move we adjourn.
Move to adjourn. It's seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Meeting is adjourned.